One. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for October 17th, 2024. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome. As your host for the evening, let's start off by introducing ourselves. To my far left, please.
Jasper Bimba.
Michael Donlin.
Richard Tripp.
Crystal Morin, Secretary.
I'd be Lynn Perkins, the chair.
Craig Corbett, Vice Chair.
Donald Burgess, member.
Jim Dietzel.
Bob Wentworth, Code Enforcement.
And we have Lucy Peoples in the back taking our minutes, and our clerk. And a few points to note. Please shut off your cell phones, iPhones, iPads, anything that could create a distraction of the proceedings. In the event of an emergency, please exit to the rear of the room. Someone will assist you. Don't use the elevator. These proceedings are audio-video recorded and scheduled to terminate by policy at 10 p.m. That being said, I think we are set for our first case, which would be case number 24-130, represented by Patricia M. Panciaco on behalf of the Stabile Companies. And good evening, Attorney Panciaco and company. Feel free to introduce if you'd like.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Can we get you close to that mic? Hang on just a second.
You kind of almost have to eat that mic.
Hang on, Mr. Burgess. We got a technical problem there?
Nope. We should be on track.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Please proceed.
For the record, my name is Patricia Panciaco. I'm here with Doug McGuire from the Dubay Group and Eric Jackson from the Stabile Companies. We're here tonight to present a variance application on behalf of Stabile Companies of Nashua. The variance is requesting relief from Article 165-45.1 parentheses capital A, to permit the construction of up to 15 townhouses on a parcel of land located at 46 High Street. Tax maps 29, lot 46, 46-01, and 4602. There are three separate single-family lots that collectively comprise 1.86 acres. Until on or about 2005, multifamily was allowed in the MHDR 2 zone. The parcels are located in the MHDR 2 zone at the intersection of High Street, Ash Street, and Maple Streets. They are located at the easterly fringe of that particular zone and directly across from industrial and commercial uses, as well as townhouse condominiums. There's at least 2 rows of them on Maple Street. The property is within walking distance from downtown Derry, and in 2019, the property was approved as a 3-lot subdivision. It has remained vacant since that time. The land itself is irregularly shaped. Its frontage along High Street and Ash Street rises up sharply from the road right-of-way. It moderates once you're up there, and it also has some frontage, a little less than 30 feet, along Highland, where an existing multifamily located at the corner of Everett and Highland encroaches upon the right-of-way.
Attorney Matt Panciaco, are you giving your own narrative outside of the 5 criteria?
I'm providing a little bit of
But
background
you are
on the
giving your own
property.
narrative outside 5 criteria.
It's in the 5 criteria also. Would you like that read first?
Well, I think you've been with us enough that that's our typical protocol. But I'll tell you what, if you don't have much longer on, I'll let you proceed, and I don't want to take you off track.
Okay, I was hoping to just kind of orient the board where we're located, and then hoping that they would understand the
Sure.
narrative.
How
If
much
you-
more do you have?
Probably 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes. 1 minute if that.
Well, I'll yield. We typically have the 5 criteria read for the record as sworn statement and matching the statutes. So that's how this board has typically operated. I think you've been with us several times. And so I just wanted to see how far you were going to go on your own narrative before you got to the 5 criteria.
I can certainly summarize this at the end, Mr. Chairman, if you would prefer.
Just wanted to make sure all the board members were following you. So go ahead and finish up your own narrative, and we'll get back to the 5 criteria, okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Since entering into an agreement recently with the owner of this property, in an effort to be transparent, we actually met with the abutting property owners in the area at the end of August to gather additional feedback to hopefully answer some questions in a less formal setting. We received good feedback. Approximately half of the abutters showed up. We heard concerns about noise buffers, the like, and opened the door for any further inquiries. After Stabile entered into the agreement, he met with town officials, did substantial due diligence. And we're here to explain to the board, and I'll go through the criteria now, the challenges that are associated with developing the property as it's been approved. So you would like me to read through the application verbatim, correct?
That's our standard, yep.
Yep. Okay. The first prong is the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. For a variance to be contrary to the public interest, it must alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the public's health, safety, or welfare. And this is Chester Rod and Gun Club, Inc., v. Town of Chester. The existing neighborhood surrounding the property, as well as the structures abutting the lots themselves, include a mix of single and multifamily, with some dating back to the early 1900s. Many of the existing lot sizes within the block in which the lots are located are fairly modest, but their total area is 2.64 acres, as summarized on Exhibit 1. There are 22 units on those 10 lots, as listed on Exhibit 1. 5 single-family homes, 2 duplexes, 2 3-family homes, and 1 7-family dwelling, each having its own driveway, with collective density for the abutting structures at 0.12 acres of land per unit. The applicant is proposing up to 15 units on 1.86 acres, which is 0.124 acres per unit. The units will all be accessed via a single driveway. The density is slightly higher than the collective density of all the abutting properties. The proposed density is also consistent with the multifamily density allowed in zones where multifamily is permitted. As stated in the statement of intent, the lots are located on the outer fringe of the MHDR2. Diagonally across from the lots is a 6-unit multifamily at the corner of High and Maple Streets. To the east is a vacant parcel owned by Eversource in an industrial warehouse building. To the north is Granite Industrial Gas Company. The latter 2 properties are located in the CBD zone, and neither aligns with the character of a single-family home neighborhood. A new condominium development with most of the proposed units set back further from High Street will provide an easy transition between these zoning districts and will not change the character of the neighborhood or pose a threat to public health, safety, or welfare. In addition, the proposed units will be within walking distance of downtown Derry. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. For a variance to be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance, it must markedly conflict with its intended purpose. Biggs v. Sandwich. Before the rezoning, this general area was zoned to allow a mix of single, duplex, and multifamily dwellings. In 2005, and in an effort to encourage further economic development within Derry's downtown, due to the anticipated construction of Exit 4A, a multifamily use was removed as a permitted use in the MHDR2 zone to encourage single-family homes up to the Londonderry town line. While that effort may have been successful closer to Londonderry, the lots which are the subject matter of this application are located on the opposite side of the MHDR2 zone, further away from Londonderry area that is already fully developed. In addition, the lots are directly across from non-residential industrial uses and directly abut other multifamily uses. A well-landscaped condominium development will also provide a more attractive transition between these existing business uses and the neighborhood, in addition to being professionally managed, and will not be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance prior to rezoning. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. For a variance to be substantially just, any loss to the individual must be outweighed by a gain to the public. U-Haul Company of New Hampshire v. Vermont, Inc. v. Concord. In U-Haul, the New Hampshire Supreme Court affirmed the inclusion of an apartment located in a commercial building as substantially just and in the interest of public safety. Due to the geological, topographical, and other challenges identified on the plan by the Dubé Group, which created the lots, it is not economically feasible to develop 3 single-family homes on this 1.86-acre parcel. As shown on the approved subdivision plans provided by the Dubé Group, there are numerous physical constraints associated with developing the lots for single-family homes, all of which are very costly, as shown on the 3 single-family home pro forma attached as Exhibit 3. As a consequence, the cost of the improvements when added to a small single-family home will exceed the fair market value of any home, even without profit. The values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished. Granting a variance to allow the construction of up to 15 new condominium units on this 1.86-acre parcel of land would have a positive impact on the surrounding property values by redeveloping this vacant site as an attractive condominium townhouse development, with all areas of the site being maintained by a condominium association. As stated by Gail Nickerson of Berkshire Hathaway Varani Realty, a proposed townhouse condominium will not have an adverse impact on the value of the abutting parcels and may in fact enhance their values. Number 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. For purposes of this subparagraph, unnecessary hardship means that owing to the special conditions of this property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property, and the proposed use is a reasonable one. The special condition of these lots as they presently exist include their irregular shape, the limited building envelopes, challenging topography, large drainage easements that will be very difficult to maintain, an obscure rear access to one of the lots, limited yards, and being located on the periphery of the MHDR2 zone in plain view of industrial and commercial uses. In addition to these special conditions causing hardship, it is not economically feasible to develop these lots with single-family homes as shown by the financial performer attached as Exhibit 2. This problem also cannot be cured by building a larger home because 2 of the 3 lots will not accommodate a larger home, depriving any developer of any reasonable rate of return on investment. In light of the above challenges, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the ordinance desire to encourage single-family development and discourage the creation of additional multifamily condominium development as applied to these lots, because it is not economically feasible to build 3 single-family homes on the lots. But a condominium development with 15 units, which is consistent with the density within this specific block, is financially viable as shown by Exhibit 3. In addition, a condominium accessed by a single driveway will be managed and maintained by an association and bring values in the areas up, in addition to creating a walkable community. A condominium development is a reasonable use in this location, will add value and be consistent with other uses in this location. And that is the application.
So I'd like to get some clarification here. One of the things that you talk about, refer to as Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3, but I don't see anything labeled Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3.
The next page after the narrative is Exhibit 1.
Really?
You should have it. It was with the application.
This?
Those are the plans that Dubay Group provided.
I see. Are those marked? They are, okay.
Okay?
I see, okay, very good, thank you. I wanted that clarified.
Okay. In Exhibit 1, while you asked about that,
Yeah, is Exhibit 1 the density calculation?
yes, it is. This information relates to the properties that are within the same city block as the subject property. The information was taken from the town's assessment records as to the number of units in the area of the land on which they're located. And what I found, and I just put it all in there from the tax cards, there's 22 units on those 10 lots, total of 2.64 acres, and that comes out to 0.12 acres per unit, which is actually a little bit more dense than what we're proposing, and that was the purpose of including Exhibit 1. The other exhibits, Mr. Chairman, either Doug McGuire or Eric Jackson, who are with me tonight, will explain and go through.
Okay. Exhibit 5.
See if-
There's exhibit.
Well, gentlemen, please feel free.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you hopefully have also in your packets were the plan exhibits, not necessarily exhibits, but just plan sheets that were added to supplement to your package. And I'd like to just quickly walk members of the board through a few of those to provide some visual understanding of our application. So first exhibit here, first page, is just an overview of the property. The overall property, the 3 lots, is that yellow shape. You can see it's a bit of an odd-shaped lot, and that was its original layout prior to the attempt to subdivide the property into 3 lots, which is shown on the second slide. So this is a zoom in. The outside is the green. That's the shape you just saw. And you can see these are the three lots shown. You have a red lot that has frontage on the, basically kind of right at the intersection of Ash, High, Maple, and North High. And then you have two additional lots in yellow and in purple that both, one fronts on Ash Street and one fronts on High Street. Now, from this view, it looks that, you know, there's potential viability in this development, and that's why they pursued this. Unfortunately, there's several issues with each one of these potential lots that have caused issue with this being able to be successfully developed from 2020 to now. And so if we could go to the third slide, please. So what we have, and I'll just quickly walk the board through a few different items on each lot, starting with the red lot. So, as I said, this lot has its legal frontage on Ash and High, the intersection there. Unfortunately, there's no viable access to there because there's a large rain garden that was proposed to accommodate the drainage of this three-lot subdivision. So the entirety of that frontage there that's highlighted in green is a large rain garden pond that is a stormwater management practice. The problem with that is that because these are single-family lots, it's required to be added to this red lot, but the responsibility of the maintenance falls with the owner of this red lot. And just so we all understand, a rain garden is essentially a depression detention pond that promotes infiltration and treatment of the surface water. So most of the site grades down towards this area, so that's why they placed it in that location. So the primary access to this red lot is going to be via another smaller access point on Hillside Ave. The problem with this access point is that, as Attorney Panciaco alluded to in her narrative, there's a existing building encroachment. That building to the south is an existing multifamily building that encroaches onto the subject property. And there's not a lot of width there to begin with. And so when this was actually approved, it was actually required for there to be guardrail placed along the edge of the building to protect the existing building of which encroached from the driveway, because those are multifamily units with windows right there. So as you can imagine, when someone dives into the potential development of this, these are red flags that would make this lot very difficult to market and actually pursue. The yellow lot has similar problems in different ways. Because of a lack of sight distance on Ash Street, they could not have frontage through their primary frontage, which was on Ash. And instead, there's a driveway easement shown in blue, of which is a shared driveway for, we'll call it the yellow lot and the pink lot. And so the only driveway access for the yellow lot is coming in essentially into the rear of that lot. And, I mean, obviously, if you look at the abutter to the northwest, they have their driveway off of Ash Street with their house facing towards the road. The intent would be to do the same. Unfortunately, your driveway is coming into your backyard. So it makes it a difficult design to be able to have a conventional home on that yellow lot when you actually get into the details of how this is laid out. It would have no conventional front and backyard. And then there's also existing grading on this site that would require the westerly side to be built into the hill. That, I mean, obviously could be done, but when you're looking at a colonial shape type box, you normally wouldn't put just one end, the gable end, into the side of a slope. It would be an odd layout, again, creating issues for the marketability of this lot. The last lot is the pink lot, and Unfortunately, again, due to the easement that is necessary for the yellow lot, that is a required location for a driveway. So immediately, this pink lot is being encumbered or restricted as to how it can be developed, because that, they're going to have that shared access legally for the yellow lot going through their property. The other issue here is, again, in grade, it jumps up in grade coming towards the south, and so that, the only way essentially to develop this would be to do a front load garage under, which would create a very steep front yard area, and not a bit of an unconventional layout again with this. And these are right on the setback lines, the 15-foot side setbacks as permitted in this zone. And even then, there isn't much space for the development. So when, this was the plan that Stabile Companies got in order to pursue this project, because that's what was originally approved. They ran pro forma numbers and ran into the same problems that I just described with these lots, and determined that 3 single-family homes at this property location was not going to be a viable development option. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So what they did is they looked at the property as other potential opportunities. And what we did is we looked at what, and again, this was alluded to in Attorney Panciaco's narrative, but there's several different uses within this development. This is all similarly zoned, but all different uses. You have a mixture of single-family properties, which are shown in green. You have electrical or utility-related companies in the orange type color. You have commercial properties in the red, and you have multifamily in blue. So when you look around at the surrounding properties that are directly adjacent to this, if single family wasn't necessarily a viable option, it seems that in the nature of the neighborhood that multifamily could potentially be an appropriate option. So what we then did is evaluated the property, recognizing that this would require a variance, to look at it for a potential multifamily development, which, if we could go to the next slide, please.
You could hold just a second. That last slide, I'm just for future reference, I'm going to call that picture A, okay? If we need to go back to it.
Okay, fair
Let's
enough.
proceed.
Appreciate that. I probably should have labeled them with A's and B's. That would have been helpful. So what we have here is we have that original slide that we started with, but now with a conceptual multifamily townhouse development shown on the lot. We feel that this fits in very naturally into this irregular shaped lot. It works very well. It works well with the grade. And essentially, just to give you a little bit of a background of what we're looking to do here, we're showing 15 townhomes. These townhomes would be condominiums for sale. These would not be intended to be rentals. They would be 2-bedroom residential units with 1.5 baths, a full bath on the floor with the 2 bedrooms, and a half bath on the floor with the living room and the kitchen. You can see that this is going to have one primary access off of High Street, furthest away from the 4-way intersection, and an opportunity, should the planning board and or if we made it to that level, look for a secondary emergency-only gated access, we could create a gated access out to Hillside Ave, but that would not be open to the public, so some of the concerns of the encroached building would not be as much of an issue in this case. The units that we're showing are realistic units that the Stabile Companies have used on other developments in the past. So it is a real unit based on reality. The units are approximately 16.5 feet wide by 40 feet deep, which equates to a little under 1,400 square feet per unit. They have a single car garage in the front. And these units would work really well with the topography, unlike the single-family homes, for some of the reasons that we discussed. These units are proposing to have a garage at the front drive-in level, and those can be built into the hill to allow for call it the second floor, which is the living room and kitchen area, to walk out to grade in the back of the development. So it's actually taking advantage in a positive way of the topography issues that were plaguing the 3-lot development. The other thing I think is important to point out is that when we laid this out conceptually, we did think about grade, we did think about all the other regulations, but we wanted to make sure that the proposal was reasonable. So in addition to the density descriptions that Attorney Panziaco referred to, we also did a test where we reviewed this as to a zone that would permit this exact type of use, which would be your MHDR district. And as I'm sure you're aware, the MHDR district allows for 1 unit per 5,000 square feet. So if you do the math on this lot, you're actually permitted to have 16.2 units. So we're not maxing this out, we're not exceeding density that would be normally required in a development that was proposed as multifamily such as this. We're actually 1 unit, 1.2 units under that requirement. We also didn't take advantage of some of the reduced or lax setback requirements that the single-family development would have that the multifamily developments do not enjoy. In MHDR, the side and rear setbacks are not 15 feet as in this zone, they are increased to 30 feet. And so all of the setbacks that these buildings are showing at have a 30-foot side and rear setback with a 35-foot front setback. So we tried to make sure that the proposal that we're putting forth to this board is reasonable with regards to a proposed townhome development. So that is an overview of the graphics. And I guess the last thing we would ask, if we could, is to just turn it over to Eric Jackson from the Stabile Companies, so you can just give at least a quick overview of your business. While he's going through that, if we can go to the next slide, these are a realistic rendering of the townhomes in the layout that you had seen in the overview. So this is the unit, this is the 16.5-foot wide unit. You can see in the exhibit, if you look to the left side of that building, this is the view coming right from the entrance, the main entrance as you come in. You can see that those are nicely built into the hill and that the units behind them sit up a little bit higher because the rear of the property is higher. So that works out very nicely. These are essentially an exact representation of what they would be looking to propose as a unit, as well as where they'd be located on this property. If we go to the next slide. So this is just the same view, but coming in a little bit more so you can see a little bit more detail. And I don't want to steal Eric's thunder, but this is, he can talk a little bit about the product that the Stabile Companies tries to do. We do feel it's a higher end product, and would be a nice upgrade in this area. But I'll turn it to you to speak a little bit more to the
yield now, or you want
specifics.
to? Okay.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Jackson, Director of Acquisitions and Development for the Stabile Companies out of Nashua. We are a New Hampshire-based builder and property developer with a focus on developing both single-family and multifamily housing here in southern New Hampshire. Been in business since 1973 and have built about 4,000 homes over that period of time. Candidly, I think Pat and Doug did a great job of laying this out for you, and I don't have a lot to add, but I guess I would just add a few thoughts. One is relative to the project itself. So the project came to us in early 2023. At the time, as it is now, it was an approved 3-lot subdivision, and we looked at it and quickly came to the conclusion that it was not economically practical to develop it that way. It was simply too expensive, and the resulting house prices for those lots would not be high enough to justify the cost for that type of a project. As we worked through the analysis, we came to the conclusion that this could be a really neat townhome condominium project. And as Doug pointed out, condominium is important because these are, our vision here is that they would be for sale units, not for rent. Rentals tend to be more transient. We think a project here where folks are buying their home, making an investment in the neighborhood, making an investment in the community, where these units are going to function more like single-family homes, is the right project here. And the units are designed that way. And so these are a higher-end townhome than many of the rental townhomes that you'll find in the area. These units are just over 1,350 square feet with 2 bedrooms and a one-car garage that you see there, with reasonably high-level finishes in them. In thinking this through, we looked at the town master plan, and the stated goal, one of the stated goals in that plan is to encourage more diverse housing, specifically housing that can support and attract older and younger adults. Our experience with these units is that's exactly what they do. They're reasonably priced and reasonably sized, so young adults that may not be able to afford the big single-family home on the cul-de-sac, they can afford these. And on the other side, older adults that may no longer need the big house on the cul-de-sac can downsize, and they don't have to mow their lawn, they don't have to power wash their siding, and these homes tend to be a really neat fit. And so our thought initially was this could be a really great transition for this neighborhood where you have largely mixed use to the east and residential to the west. And so that's kind of how we approached it. One thing that I think is important to note and ties into some of Doug's comments is that when we first studied this project, we went out and we did a whole bunch of test pits on this piece of land, and we discovered that there's ledge all over this piece of property, and that ledge is as shallow as 1 foot and as deep as 8 feet, depending on where you go. But quite likely, if you were to build single-family homes here, you would end up blasting and removing ledge in order to get the foundation holes in there, which would have to go 8, 9, 10 feet down. The nice thing about these units, as Doug said, they fit nicely into the hill, and they're slab on grade, so they sit higher than a single-family home, which is going to have to be that 9 or 10 feet deep. These sit much closer to the surface, and we think we can probably mitigate a lot of that blasting and ledge removal that would have to happen here. A couple of the other advantages of this project: obviously you've got more units, so you can spread your development costs over more units and make this a financially feasible project, whereas we've come to the conclusion that it is not as a single-family project. These units are reasonably priced, whereas if you had single-family units here, they most likely would not be reasonably priced because you would have to cover all of that development cost spread only over three units. And again, we think we would be able to mitigate some of that ledge cost. And I think my last point, which ties into something that Pat said, is that we knew coming into this there was a history here that predated us. We knew that it was likely there would be some real focus on this project from the neighbors, and we knew that this is a big change for the neighborhood. Not all of the neighbors would be happy. It was one of our goals at the outset to see if we could find something that really would fit the character of the neighborhood and to try to go out and to understand some of the neighborhood concerns. And so we had a really great neighborhood meeting. We got some great feedback, and candidly, I think a lot of that feedback is stuff that we could build into the design as we move forward with it if we were fortunate enough to have a favorable result tonight. We fully recognize it's a big change. We can't possibly keep all of the folks in the area happy, but we do want to try to understand those concerns as best we can. I think we've made a good step to doing that. And I think we have an opportunity to build some of those adjustments into this plan through the planning process if we're fortunate enough to move forward. So I thank you for your time. I guess the other note, Pat did include some financial Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3, which are sort of financial overviews of what the pro forma would look like for a single-family home versus a townhome on this site. And I won't bore you with the details. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you have there, but I would tell you that the long and short of it is it's a terribly losing proposition if one were to try to develop single-family homes there. Again, you've got ledge, you've got very expensive utility connection costs, among other things, whereas under a townhome project, which is Exhibit 3, it's a more favorable outcome. One note on those exhibits, you'll also see, I think, Exhibit 4 is, as Pat mentioned, a letter from a real estate broker relative to property values, and Exhibit 5 is the comparative market analysis, which looks at some of the competing properties in the area. And that market analysis suggests that the price of these homes, if they were to be single-family homes, would be $594,000. In the pro forma that we put together for single-family homes, we actually used a much higher number. And we did that not because we think it would actually sell for that number, but we did that because there was actually another home on Hillside Avenue not too long ago that sold at that price. Candidly, we think it was an anomaly. We think if these homes were to be developed here as single-family homes, you would not get that kind of a number. But we didn't want anyone to say we were being too conservative. So we plugged it in there at 685, and still were not able to make the numbers work. So I just wanted to explain that discrepancy. But happy to answer any detail on those financial summaries if you have them. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to Pat and let you finish it up. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sure the board's going to have questions. We do have a lot of information. We've probably given you a lot at once. One thing I did look into was that sale on Hillside, and what I found was that house, it's a very attractive, very, very nice home. It's a lot smaller than I think Eric would propose to build. And of course, the more square footage you can put in, the higher the price. There's a whole lot of difference also in the development cost of that particular lot. It was level, it was flat. They removed another dwelling to build the dwelling that's there. The real challenge that this site presents is the conditions and the unique challenges of this parcel of land and the development costs that are associated with it. And they are dramatically higher because of all the nuances that both Doug and Eric referred to. The only way, as Eric has mentioned to you, spreading it out over more units is the only way to dilute that cost and come in with a marketable product in and around the low 400s or 400,000, which Exhibit 4 states is the state of the market for a townhouse unit in Derry. The townhouse units were up at the top, and they ranged from $395 to $400, and that's really the sweet spot where the numbers will work with this particular site and this particular form of development. So with that, I guess I don't have a whole lot more to offer. We're very anxious to hear what the board wants to know. Again, we did have what we thought was a really informative meeting with the people in the neighborhood, because it is hard when you have a big for this area, a vacant parcel of land, and somebody comes in and decides out of nowhere they want to develop it. So that was the purpose of meeting with them, was to understand their concerns so that it could be factored in to the plan moving forward. So with that, I guess I have nothing more on my list, except, once we hear from the public and any questions of the board, I would like an opportunity to briefly recap the points before you go into deliberations.
Well, our policies and procedures, Attorney Pansiaco, allow rebuttal.
Okay.
Standard by statute anyway.
Thank you.
And I think we want to open up with Mr. Corbett. He had some questions.
Thank you, guys. First off, gorgeous-looking townhomes right off the bat. However, an area I'm struggling with is how this does not go against the spirit of the ordinance. It was noted that if this property was MHDR, that 16.2 units would be allowed. However, it was also noted that this area was specifically placed into MHDR District 2 in 2005, which eliminates it from that for the specific reason. In addition to that, looking at Exhibit 1, we have a list of the houses here, the 22 units, to prove the density. However, starting off looking at the multifamily, or the ones with multiple units, 44 High Street was built in 1900, 7 Everett Street 1900, 9 Everett Street 1945, 10 Hillside 1940, 4 Ash Street 1951. Running down the Everett Street single families, we're looking at 1900. 8 Hillside Ave was previously a mobile home. It was renovated this year. And the 2 Ash Streets were built in the 60s. So, with all of everything that was shared tonight, I'm really having a tough time understanding how this doesn't specifically go against the spirit of the ordinance.
Okay, so I looked at that also, and you are indeed correct. All of those buildings predate the ordinance. And in 2005, they removed the ability to allow a multifamily in this particular location. As I understand it correctly, and I wasn't involved in that, and anybody who knows more about this, it would be helpful to hear from them. There was a concern about the character of the area, knowing that Exit 4A was going to be built, and at the time, there was a lot of multifamily being built in Derry. And there was a sentiment amongst the town council that they wanted to kind of slow that down. And that was part of the driving force of why there was so much rezoning to eliminate the multifamily. But here, aside from the hardships associated with this parcel of land, the horse had left the barn. The area was already developed. Now, the area of MHDR2, and I actually did look at this closely, I noticed that over in that area, vacant lots are larger as you move towards the 93 in the Londonderry town line. But this particular area is on the easterly fringe of the MHDR2. It's directly across the road from commercial and industrial. And that just can't be helped. A zoning line has to stop and start at a certain point. But an arbitrary line, or maybe not so arbitrary, on a map doesn't always translate quickly into changes in the area. Now, all the houses that are around this particular parcel, one would hope, oh, well, maybe they'll just go away and become single families. That's just not how it works. Things evolve over time. And actually, a townhouse, while it's characterized as a multifamily because it's in a multifamily building, they are individual homes. And they open out, they have their own front door, they have their own garages. They're very different than the stacked multifamilies we all see now going up and down 93, or the old-fashioned three-level three families. So I do understand what you're saying, but there has to be a transition, and the transition doesn't become a line on a map or a line formed by a road that commercial all of a sudden has to face single-family homes. There has to be a gradual transition, and I think we meet that by what we're proposing here.
So
And
stop
it's
there.
new.
Just one thing that sorry, I'd got to use against, to kind of use that there would be 15 single-family houses in a respect. Now we'd be talking a subdivision for 15 single-family parcels, which would also be, you know, completely against the spirit of the ordinance when we look at the size. So I guess just again, you know, we talk that across the way is industrial, but where this is residential. So it's not necessarily an arbitrary line. It actually seems like it was a thought-out line for a change. I'm just still struggling to see how it does not go against the very specific ordinance to not allow more of this.
Under the legal test, though, Mr. Corbett, it has to conflict in a substantial way. It does not have to be wholly consistent with the intent of the ordinance. It has to be a dramatic shift, and it has to be not contrary to public health welfare. There is a middle ground. There is some flexibility that allows the board to exercise judgment.
Right, and I would say that that would be a single-family parcel now going to 15 single-family parcels would that be tough?
I'd say one thing.
Yep, Mr. Burrs.
I did some math earlier, and according to this, for a single-family home, which these would be assumed, established as, you need 10,000 square feet per unit. So you only get 5,400, so you're way short of the 10,000. So as single-family homes, these are single-family homes as far as I'm concerned, as far as some of the board is concerned, I guess, also. So you're way, there is no, you know, I just don't understand. I understand the economics. I read that.
Are you referring, Mr. Burgess, to Exhibit 1?
Excuse me, please?
Are you asking me about Exhibit 1?
I'm asking you about the size of the property. See, the thing is, if you have 15 apartments and you divide it into the amount of square feet you have available to you, you're supposed to end up with 10,000 square foot per single-family home. And we don't have 10,000 square feet. We're about halfway there.
We're not proposing single-family
Well,
homes.
that's what you just said, ma'am.
No,
Well, yes, you did.
I said a townhouse is more like a single-family
Well,
home.
all right, you did say it was a single-family home in that respect.
It's more like a single-family home,
Well, to me, all right.
but
In
it
my
is a
opinion-
multifamily under zoning definitions, yes.
But I do know a little bit of the property. I lived in the neighborhood for 26 years now.
Okay.
And I remember going there. I remember when we did this the previous time that we had it in front of the board. And after we had the application approved for those 3 homes, I went on a site walk with the planning board to see what we were talking about and the sight lines. I don't agree with the sightline thing on Ash Street, but that's just me. I don't have any vote in that. But, so I know the property, and I know, knew the gentleman who lived there once upon a time. He passed. And the property has been around for a while.
Yes, it has.
And if it was built back in, when you originally got the zoning for it, it may have been more economically feasible.
I'm not sure I understand, got the zoning for it. Could you help me with that?
Huh?
What you had just mentioned, we got the zoning for it. Was there
It was 2005?
zoning relief
Changed.
granted?
It was changed in 2005, right?
When the zoning changed?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay.
And you did it, you had your meeting, or they had a meeting for 2000 was when the property was established as being buildable, that we had a plan for it.
I wasn't involved.
Okay,
I'm not familiar with that.
I'm just telling you what you wrote in what was written to me. I'm reading these things, and it says that, you know, we had this plan in 2000 that they had, and all they had to do was build. Back then, it may have been more cost-effective at that time.
2019, the 3-lot subdivision was approved. 2020, 2020, it was
2019.
recorded?
Okay.
Yes, that wasn't approved. The 3-lot subdivision was 2020 recorded, 2019 approved.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think, and just to add to that, so the 3-lot subdivision was an attempt post-2005 to meet the zoning
Right.
of this district, of the MHDR2.
Yes.
So they came up with a subdivision that met all the requirements. It didn't require zoning relief.
Right.
And our position is that that 3-lot subdivision for the last almost 5 years has been marketed, and it's been determined for the testimony that we gave as a not viable option.
Okay.
I mean,
And then I guess,
We have already previously, within the last 2 years, we have denied someone similar to this, that abuts your property, to have 2 homes put in the spot that was less.
we're
So
familiar with
it's-
that.
We're doing the same thing here. We're just, we're talking about the same premise. Similar.
I would
Let's not say the
disagree.
same,
I
okay?
would disagree with that, Mr. Burgess, because I actually went back and read the minutes. In fact, I went back and read them again today. I read through the minutes of that, and what they failed to prove to this board is that that property suffers from a hardship. This property has a long list of them,
Okay.
and they're physical hardships associated with the land itself that prevent its reasonable use in accordance with zoning, as zoning is presently. So, yes, I did review that, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, they wanted to do a duplex instead of a single-family home?
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you.
Did they propose a duplex as opposed to a single?
They wanted to do 2 homes at one time, then they proposed a duplex, as I recall. I could be wrong on that one.
Yeah, I think you're right, it was
Okay.
last year. And they did not prove hardship. In fact, I noted in the minutes that the chairman gave them a second, well, did you want to talk a little more about hardship? And there was nothing forthcoming, at least not in the minutes.
Okay.
You rest,
Very
Mr. Burgess?
generous.
I'm good.
Mr. Tripp, anything?
Not presently.
Mr. Donlin?
Yeah, I have one quick question, since it might be slightly out of the purview of the board, but since it was part of your testimony and the hardship, you talked about the large drainage easements, and if you look at the facsimile, it seems like with more impervious area in that redded out area in that map you showed earlier, that was the drainage for the lot and everything, that was hard to maintain. Can you elaborate on how you plan on dealing with that sort of hardship as pavement now?
absolutely, yeah. And I can understand the question. When it comes to the 3-lot, that's a more complicated procedure to address drainage, because you have 3 separate properties, physical property lines, and property owners. What we're proposing, being that this is a condominium development, it would be, owned collectively by the owners, but maintained by a condominium association collectively of the owners. What we had looked at is there's opportunities for drainage on the site. We had some areas of fill that we were able to create that we could promote some recharge on despite the ledge conditions. We had areas that we were creating of fill. We also left areas that we too could have a depression similar to the rain garden proposed on the single family. The benefit here is it would be master planned into the development, not in the way of an access or not impeding something. So from our standpoint, having this being a residential site plan gives us a lot more control as a civil engineer to figure out the drainage, maybe do roof drains for the roofs, whereas it's hard to propose that for a single-family home because you have no way of knowing whether that's maintainable by the homeowners. So there's a lot more flexibility with this. And as I said, we did not, in our opinion, by any means maximize this type of a development any more so than what you would typically see in another multifamily residential development within the town. So the green space allocations, the larger setbacks, the green space setbacks, the landscape buffer strips, all of those pieces that would be part of a potential planning board process. We kind of thought about those ahead of time, candidly, because we've done multifamily development in town. We know what the standard is for that. And so we're very confident that this proposal, obviously, would have to go through the planning board process once it left this board, if it was to be favorably acted on, but that we can move forward with that process, with this layout.
Mr. Obimba?
Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dietzel?
Mr. Chair, oh, sorry.
Hang on, anything, Mr. Dietzel?
I just have a quick, I guess, housekeeping item. The applicant in this case is Attorney Panciaco on behalf of the Stabile Companies. And I have a memo here from High Meadow LLC authorizing you to act on their behalf. Do you have or do you need a similar one from Stabile?
No.
He's here.
No?
It is my understanding you're under agreement on this property?
Yes.
That,
Okay.
that's your
All
protocol.
right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Yes.
Corbett?
Yeah, that was part of the question I wanted to piggyback off Mr. Donlan's hardship. So it stated that the property sold in 2016, they came to us in 2019, they had it subdivided into 3, and as was stated, it didn't require a variance. But now, under the purchase, we're being determined that it's not feasible to build the 3 single families, so we need to go to the 15 units. It just seems that it's, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's, I don't want to say egregious ask, but kind of getting to that point, that it comes in originally under the first sale that we need to go from a single family to subdivide it to 3. Now we buy 3 properties, say, oh, that doesn't work, I need to switch it back to 1, but instead of the pre-existing single family, I need to switch it to 15 units. It almost seems a bit like a hardship that was brought upon yourself prior to purchase.
So if I could just clarify something on that. I understand what you're saying, but there's one important point that I think does maybe help with that. The Stabile Companies has not been involved with this property prior to that subdivision. The landowners, back after 2005, they said, oh, well, how are we going to develop this property? They moved forward with an independent company, not my office. So I didn't perform this subdivision. They completed that in early 2020, started in 18, I believe, actually. There was a lot of engineering-related issues from what I could see through the plan set to get to where they were. But that was completed. The Stabile Companies was not involved. None of us were involved in that. And the landowners, they had marketed that, and they were moving forward and trying to market this, develop this as that 3-lot subdivision.
Right, so that's where my question is. So when you bought this property, I guess the Stabile Companies, were you buying 3 single-family lots, or were you buying 3 single-family lots with the intention to develop it like this?
So we have not purchased the property. The Stabile Companies hasn't purchased the property. They have the property under agreement, knowing that essentially, as they did the evaluations here, that the 3-lot was not going to work for them. They thought that, after we talked this through and all of our testimony that we've given, we thought that a multifamily could be appropriate here. So, I mean, obviously,
Sorry, because my question's not getting answered. So when the purchase agreement got there, were you intending to build 3 single-family houses, or were we always looking to develop this? Because that is not I don't see a hardship there.
Yeah.
So I guess Mr. Corbett's getting at, was this premeditated entering into this agreement to just build the 15 units versus putting 3 houses on it? Am I close?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
When the Stabile Companies first was introduced to this property, they indicated that they would look at it as the 3 lots, but if the 3 lots were not feasible, it would be able to look at other alternatives. And at this point, the 3 lots are out of the picture. And, it is not unusual for somebody who is not an experienced developer, which I will say the current owner is not a seasoned developer. to buy a piece of land, hire an engineer and a surveyor, and to come up with a development plan. And then when they go out and they go to develop it, find out that the numbers don't make sense. That is not unlike somebody who says, I'm going to build a new home, and they go to the architect and they make this beautiful drawing only to find out it's twice what they can afford. This happens all the time, that people have to come back and regroup, and unfortunately, it makes a lot of work for the town.
Oh, understood,
That's
but-
the case here.
Is not doing due diligence an unnecessary hardship?
An unnecessary hardship has to relate to the land. We have not claimed
Right, but what you
that.
just said is, I'm having a tough time with the testimony because it kind of goes in circles. You're saying someone who's not familiar purchases thinking they can do it. Well, due diligence is not a hardship. To not do your due diligence,
We
and then to
are-
say, well, understood, but you're saying that the previous people did not, so now it has to be completely rectified to 15 units. I'm just having a tough time seeing the hardship and the ordinance, but I'll kind of defer to the rest of the board at this point.
I'm not following.
So if I could just add one thing to that, I mean, I think the hardship that we're trying to provide that testimony, but it's specific to the land, because the 3 lots, for this to be developed by the allowed zoning, which only allows for single family at this point, it was developed as single family and has been found to not be viable, not only by the Stabile companies and their analysis, but just the fact that this has been going on since 2018, and we have, in the most robust housing boom and desire for lots, you have 3 single-family lots that have not been developed. I mean, people are making the most creative lots I've ever seen over the last several years, and marketing and getting those and making a profit. And so if you take Stabile out of this for a second, and you look at, we've went through the most robust growth of housing that we've basically ever seen, and these 3 lots have not been taken by Stabile or any other developer, or even a single-family home owner that said, hey, I want to do my own lot. What that's telling us, and what we were trying to provide in our testimony, is that this piece of land, the way it's shaped, the way its access is, the encumbrance on the secondary access, the need for drainage, all of those pieces are making this it's a hardship for it to be developed as single-family homes. And that is why we're proposing it as the multi.
So if I can jump in here, I haven't asked any questions, but, you know, I developed myself, and I haven't seen these properties on the market advertised at all. So and perhaps it goes to my question I'm going to ask in a few minutes, relevant to the hardship and the development. So I haven't seen them listed anywhere, so I don't know that it's actually been on the market for 5 years.
I haven't seen either one listed with during my research either.
And I do know the owner, as all of us have intimate knowledge of our community, so I know that there is some experience there with the current owner and his knowledge of building and erecting houses and so on and so forth. Maybe not to this expertise and relating to some of the geographic aspects that you've described, and that can catch people off guard from time to time. The economically feasible aspect really is subjective, is it not?
That is why, Mr. Chairman, we submitted the 2 pro formas, and perhaps we should go through those and look at those a little more closely.
Why don't I go through all my questions slowly and see how this shapes up?
Sure.
Economic feasibility usually starts with the price point of the parcel, does it not? I mean, I know that we've had lots proposed to us earlier this year. One lot that met the zoning, proposed to subdivide into 3. The board gave it 2, but then those lots went up for $300,000 each when they were supposed to be starter homes, correct? So
I don't know what he did with it.
300,000, so it would be very easy for somebody that's buying a $300,000 lot for a single home to come in and say, well, I've got a hardship because I can't afford to build one home on that. That meets the criteria of the rest of the zone. So I'd like a two-family there because it's more economically viable. And I'm seeing that the shape up here in this argument, which is what's the price point of the home or of the lot, and is that making three houses economically not feasible? So I'm sure, so to Mr. Corbett's point, I'm not sure if I understand totally the economic feasibility issue that you're prescribing or suggesting here. Because if the lots were $25,000 each, which is not practical here, understanding the history of this lot, then single-family homes become economically feasible. Correct?
If they were 25 each, yes, I can see where
Correct.
you would say that.
And so what ends up happening is you're paying for a price for a parcel that may be exorbitant, and that in itself, in development of this parcel, makes it difficult for it to be economically feasible. So now we have to go back to that hardship question and say, what is the hardship? And that's what's rattling around in my head as well. I have some other questions on the development aspect of this. I'd like to look at the rain garden for a minute. That was identified as some of the difficulty to this plan, correct?
Yes.
But what was portrayed is that in the red zone owned by the easement, the rain garden easement area, that belongs to the red parcel, not the pink parcel, am I correct?
Yes.
And is that part of the difficulty, is the maintenance of that rain garden area? Is that part of your hardship portrayal?
I think it's one of the tests that go beyond just the financial when it comes to this. I think, when you look at that yellow lot, and when we talked about how to develop that lot, I mean, let's take the price, whatever the price of the lot is, forget about.
Put it up.
Can we put that back, please? So whatever the price of that lot is, the issue, I think, the concern that when you're going to market these and you said, oh, this lot's for $50,000, someone that's going to buy this lot they have to orient their house. Obviously, they want it to be, they don't want their backyard to be facing Ash Street. They don't want the side of their house built into the sill or into the hill. They would rather the rear or a walkout. And, so the way that this is shown, and again, this isn't my plan. I blacked out the name just so I could utilize but this is the record plan. And the location of where the house is shown is where they had it. They don't have the ability even to have a garage on this property, because if you couldn't even have a garage under, because you don't have enough room to back out of your driveway on the property.
And of the three, which one are you referring to?
The yellow lot.
Very good,
The
thank
yellow
you.
lot.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think, so what I was trying to say is, and I just want to make sure that the board is appreciating, I guess, the two different discussions we've had. We certainly brought up a financial component, but when I see hardship of this lot, I see the hardship of the access to the lots, the hardship of an existing encroachment on the property, the hardship of having a maintenance item required that's only on one subject lot and not on many because they're single families. The driveway easement that would be required and the reason that was because obviously it would not be appropriate going through the planning board process. I can just know that a driveway would not be appropriate to come out in the middle of a four-way intersection. So obviously you can't have it there. The Ash Street connection could potentially be appropriate, but not my words. Mark LaRue's words were that there was not available site distance at that location, and hence the requirement for the easement area when this was permitted. So there are physical features of this site that do create hardship. The shape of the lot, This lot wasn't made into this shape by the applicant or anything. They inherited this hardship, and in an effort to comply, the owner of the property, not a potential developer, but the owner of the property, went and tried to develop this as single families, and these are the issues that we're running into. So that was my point of this exhibit, was to show, forget about costs, there were marketability. I mean, everybody's different, but I know if I was gonna buy my first single-family home, or I was gonna upgrade or whatever, I would not wanna have a guardrail along my driveway with windows to the multifamily, and that be my only way into my lot. And that, in my opinion, is the best lot. It's the most conventional with a larger yard. Then you look at the other ones, and as I said, I wouldn't want to have a shared driveway easement that would limit and have to have responsibility of who's plowing and who's doing what. I certainly wouldn't want yellow, just because of all the items that we discussed. So there's hardships for all of the lots and how this is laid out to make it very difficult based on the shape of this lot and the access, the one-way access on High Street, the four-way intersection, for this lot to be developed in a single-family manner. That's what we were trying to.
Does Stabile do single-family homes?
Yes.
Is that in your portfolio?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Mr. Tripp?
On sheet 5 of your presentation,
Is that the Exhibit A we were going to say? The next one?
Show it to
This
me,
one?
Richard.
This one?
Oh, your front page there of your trifold. Go ahead. No,
it's sheet 5.
5.
I know your sheets aren't.
One more? Thank you. Sorry about that.
I know your sheets aren't numbered, but mine are.
That won't happen again.
Right here.
The thing that,
I actually, excuse me, just for the record, I have that marked on my own as sheet B, so,
sheet B,
so you know.
We'll do better next time.
Please, go ahead, Mr. Tripp.
possibly be sheet B.
It's my own
Oh.
coded way of doing
Oh,
things.
oh.
It's shorthand.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, anyhow, I noticed down in the in between Maple Avenue and High Street, there's some buildings. Do you know what those are?
Yes, those are existing townhouses.
Oh. So all you have to do is go across the street and you're legal?
That's right.
Well, and I think, that, again, I appreciate the point. It was certainly part of our testimony that, if we could go back one sheet, please, sir, that, I think this for me was a pretty powerful graphic
Okay.
in looking at it, in that the blue color are all existing multifamily developments within this area. So, and I understand that some of them are pre-existing, but when...
They were all pre-existing.
I guess, to me, and I look at that when I'm looking at the tests of a specific site, and we're evaluating every case on a site-by-site basis. If you look that this is essentially surrounded more by multifamily than it is by single,
Yep.
it seems reasonable to me. And so, yes, you're right that you have a townhouse development across the street, and you have multifamily essentially all along the property.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Burgess.
Okay.
Well, presuming Mr. Tripp,
One Mr.
I'll let,
Okay. Those townhouses were an apartment building to begin with. So all they did is they filled it back in, but that house was there before I moved in, and I assume probably turn of the century type of thing. So all they did is replace what was on the property, which they had the right to do.
Yep.
Understood. I think our point is that when you look at this uniquely shaped lot, with the hardships that it has from access and other items, grade, and you say, is it, I think immediately, if this was surrounded by all single-family homes, and we were trying to come in with that as a test to say, we want multifamily, I understand where that could, but when you have multi-family, you have multiple uses, this would not be contrary to the neighborhood feel of this area at all. In fact, it would probably be complementary to the existing neighborhood to have the townhouses, and again, meeting all those requirements as what would be required if it were townhouses, which we can't say about that property across the street. That is not meeting the intents, at least of the current zoning, if it were to be multifamily.
I guess at that point, it wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood. How many bedrooms are each of these units?
These are 2-bedroom units.
So again, where three single families would currently exist, we'd now be looking to add potentially 30 people, rather than 12. So, and I feel like each of the arguments being made aren't actually proving.
Gonna get up to your mic.
Aren't actually proving the 5 criteria that we're saying it doesn't change it, but we're going to triple the density in this one little area. But we're going to compare it to houses that are hundreds of years old. And I don't mean any disrespect with it, but hearing the hardship of, I wouldn't want to have to share a driveway easement. How many houses in New Hampshire have that? I mean, we're talking inconveniences that we're now listing as hardships.
That's one test.
Right, and I also wouldn't want guardrails along my driveway. Again, it's a personal preference. It's not a hardship. So what I'm hearing when we ask, what's necessarily the hardship, it's not economical, but then it's kind of an inconvenience. I'm just not seeing the 5 criteria being met.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, I got
hang on,
one
Mr.
question, if you don't mind?
Mr. Burgess, I yield.
Real quick. Why are we putting guardrails? I don't, they've never been there.
What's that?
The guardrails, there's no guardrails.
So when this subdivision, the 3-lot
This is on
subdivision.
High Street, right? The guardrails?
So if you look
on the
at where the cursor is up here on this graphic,
Oh, there it is. Oh, up there.
that
So that's
encroach-
hillside.
Correct.
Okay, so when I'm wondering, so that's where the guardrails are? Okay.
It's not there today.
No.
But that's
what they
where it
would
would be
Okay.
required.
That's what got me confused. I didn't know what you were talking about. All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
I think I forgot my question. But
I've been there.
anybody else have any questions?
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
I do.
Oh, Mr. Donlin.
Just kind of touching on a couple different things, but I think I can get the idea to pull together. While I appreciate the not overstepping with regards to density and setbacks and green area and all that from before, as if this was in like a legitimately zoned area if we weren't here for this, right? And I believe in the testimony for substantial justice, there was some talk to transitional area in a delineation line. I can't remember the word that was used specifically, but let's just say that. And why not, without going into a long analysis of the cost comparisons of different things, at what point, maybe if you're trying to become a transitional thing in an otherwise not zoned, like maybe the density is a bridge too far in that, you get what I'm saying? Like maybe at what point does the density of this lot become profitable at current market values?
Well, I guess
Or to that same end,
Eric,
why
you wanna
not
speak?
like have less, why not
Right.
asking for less units to make it viable? I think that's kind of what Mr. Corbett was trying to get at, to some extent. But please.
Sure, yeah, I guess I would just say that we looked at this as a 15-unit townhome project. That's how we that's economically, and I know the economics are, low on the list of what matters here, but economically, that's where we determined that it made sense. So that's the reason we're looking at it that way. I mean, I would not be able to speak tonight to, is there some other point where it might work?
Sure, and that's fair. I
there-
wouldn't
Yeah,
have
there are too many
expected you to.
variables, too many variables in that question, but we determined that it does make economic sense at 15 units, whereas it does not as the single family.
And I think just to add to that is, our goal is, and you alluded to it, of, talking about the density tests and the setbacks and everything. The main purpose of doing that is to show this board, as well as be able to say confidently that this is a reasonable proposal, meaning that the density here is by no means out of line. In fact, it would have been in line in 2004. Not, obviously there was a zoning change there, of which Attorney Pansiaco explained some of her thoughts as to why that change was made. We certainly, I can speak to the town of Derry that some of the concerns that were had about regarding multifamily a decade ago are certainly not the same, being with the housing shortages that we have, and it's changed some of those sentiments.
Yes.
But I think holding those extra setbacks, I know that when we met with the butters, they appreciated that extra buffering, because obviously this is going to be a controlled neighborhood with it being part of an association. When you have 3 single-family homes, there's nothing to stop a homeowner from cutting their tree line right to the edge of their property line or anything else like any other single-family home. And so some of the concerns, I'm sure you'll hear from abutters, but some of the concerns of, I want to make sure that you're maintaining some green space in this area where you can, or, could you put a fence here? Those are items that we took in when listening to their concerns, and I think a lot of that can be addressed. The concern with it being single-family homes is a lot of that can't be required. So it's
I think
just
more to my point I was getting at was, as you put it, it was a reasonable request given the density characteristics, and I guess more to my point was, it wouldn't be a hard jump or a far jump to say that, say, 10 units would have been an even more reasonable, being that it's transitional. And if maybe to what I believe the chair's point was earlier, that sometimes things aren't economically viable for whatever reason, or they just could be a bad investment. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think obviously if this
it's
board said,
not purchased yet, it's a contingency for a good reason. I mean, at churn 4,000, you probably learned your lesson,
well, I think I would.
We didn't do the project.
Yeah, right.
2004.
Right, exactly. Well, I think I would just say that, there may be a potential to say, oh, well, could 14 units work, could 12, could 10, right? And that's something that could be evaluated. What I can tell you is that at least, and Eric, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know that when we were looking at this density, 15 for the infrastructure required was at the lower level of your confidence with this project, being that, obviously there's associated risks with any development, but to be able to do a site plan of infrastructure where you're going to have sewer line extensions, water line extensions, large grade, fire suppression systems in these residential units. So a lot of those costs can be shared over a larger density. So I think it would be, we could certainly run the numbers, but I think, if you said, would this work at 10, I think the answer is no. It just wouldn't, just because you're only getting a 5-unit building, 6, right? Are they 6s? I forget. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sorry. So you have a 6-unit building in the front, and then you come up the hill, and to go up there and just have 4 and not put one across the street from it, it would just, the infrastructure cost to get up there, it wouldn't make sense. So, that's why we didn't want to over push the setbacks or anything, to be able to say that we know that we could work within this and satisfy a butter's concerns, with this type of development. Probably more so than if it were single families, in all honesty. Just because you're going to have a landscaping plan that's maintained professionally. A homeowner can't go out and cut a tree down because they don't like it, or it's, putting shade on their deck, that can't happen. The limits of cut would be set from the beginning when they developed the property, and then when it was turned over to the association, those cut limits would be maintained. So there's a lot of benefits to it being able to be done in that manner.
So in that regard, the cutting of the trees and so on and so forth, right? You're looking at a situation where, again, you're going back to a certain style of home that would be occupying each of these 3 lots. And I think that style of home, let's say it's per se a starter home in this area, ends up kind of preserving the neighborhood and keeping it in the intent, the spirit of the ordinance for what the intentions of the town were at that time in its excuse me, development. And so, it's that kind of thing that you're looking at single-family homes, but that aspect of individual care of a parcel becomes significant because that's what we grow to expect with certain designs of homes. And I think I'm trying to address your comments here, remembering what I wanted to ask a few minutes ago. In the substantial justice argument, and you have the loss versus gain equals density for me. And, that argument is the public's gain does not offset the public's loss does not offset the gain. But this comes to the density argument, which Mr. Donald has pointed out, my emphasis, I think, as well as Mr. Corbett's. That density is the shock value here, that we find ourselves saying, okay, spirit of the ordinance, some modification from 3 single-family homes, but where's the cutoff limit? And how much of an impact do we desire here, or that we can tolerate in this area when the intention of the community is to make that transition and diminish that density impact that you're using as, I think, Exhibit 1 to demonstrate the equity in this development versus the rest of the neighborhood, correct?
Yes, and what we were trying to even more forcefully present was the mixed-use character of this neighborhood. Because if you think about it, and I had a couple of thoughts on a couple of things, these sit into the hill. And when you look out to the front, you're looking across Maple Street. You're looking into an area that is really, for the most part, non-residential. That's part of it. The other thing I wanted to mention also, on the density and what Doug alluded to on the cutting of the trees, that was absolutely a consideration here. Because this is what they refer to in the city as an infill site. When you go into a site like this, where the shape of the land was formed a long time ago, zoning uses don't change the shape of the land unless you're creating new lots, which is not the case here. We're just working with what we have in that mixed-use environment. There was a hypersensitivity here amongst Doug and Eric of being sensitive to the surrounding properties. And with the idea of an association maintaining the common land and controlling the use of the common land, that respect is more forcefully maintained. And a thought occurred to me, I believe, when Member Dolan mentioned about, the lesser number of units. It's a delicate balance. With the 15 units, we know that the numbers, we're confident that will work. The more you diminish, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with small condominiums, the more you dilute those numbers, the more the condo fees go up. Because at the end of the day, what has to be maintained has to be maintained. And a little bit less pavement isn't going to give you a whole lot more savings on the plowing contractor during the winter, which is usually the backbreaker. So the more those costs after the fact, when people are living there, are diluted amongst more, the better it is, and the more likely those associations will maintain those sites properly. That's an important thing to remember. Now, back to that single-family design, and somebody brought up the rain garden. I think it was you, Mr. Chairman. When I first looked at that, and when Doug showed it to me, I couldn't believe what I was looking at, that rain garden sticking out there right at the approach of the property. And it's separated from the home site by a common driveway used by the two neighbors, not even the guy whose land it crosses. There's no enforcement mechanism in place at all to force him to maintain that rain garden. Other than you could go see a judge. And are the other two homeowners going to do that? That goes directly to the land itself, the nature and character of the land, and what the accommodations that had to be made when the 3-lot subdivision was designed. They had to put the drainage somewhere. They stuck it right out there at the corner where the 3 lots intersect. You pull up and you've got this rain garden looking at you. And if the guy that lives in the back, who probably can't even see it from his house, doesn't want to maintain it, the other two owners have to look at it, and so doesn't the public as they drive by.
And I guess one of the things that I got thrown off with about the rain garden, I had wanted to ask earlier, was whether or not that was capable of being subdivided to the 2 front lots. And do we know that can be done or not?
Yes, we do know that we know that it cannot be done. And the reason being
Why?
is that the red lot is getting its legal frontage on, there's obviously, as you are aware, there's a certain frontage requirement in this district, and which is 100 feet. And so the access on Hillside, of which they're coming in, is not 100, excuse me, is not 100 feet wide. So they must have this dog leg, or whatever you want to call it, flag, or that goes out to that to obtain that frontage.
Couldn't it be done with a variance as well?
You'd have to.
If you were to eliminate that and ask for that lot to be just the frontage off Hillside, I suppose so.
28
So it
feet.
could be.
28
Could be
foot.
so again, we just got told it couldn't be subdivided, but it can. It will just require a variance. So again, a lot of the can't be done seems to can be done.
Well, I think, one thing I guess I'm curious about, I'd like to hear your thought, because I know you were getting hung up on the density. And I thought we did a pretty good job of having a 2-prong approach on that, which is, one, it's deemed reasonable, the density we're requesting is deemed reasonable when you're looking at it from a multifamily perspective. But 2 is, when you look at this on a specific site, where we're looking at this on a case-by-case basis of this piece of land, and we look at whether it's pre-existing, pre-zoning, doesn't really matter, what's around.
No, it does though. It does, because we put in a new variance to stop it from continuing. Ordinance, sorry. An ordinance was put into place to prevent this from continuing. You keep showing me properties from 1900, 1945, 1940, 1951, and telling me that applies today. The ordinance was put into place to stop it, and that's my issue with
We're
the
not saying that it's, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that when you're looking at the context of this neighborhood, that the density that we're proposing is not unreasonable. In fact,
What I'm proposing is that
in line.
the town came in to prevent it from continuing. They looked at it and said, there's 22 units here that average 0.12 acres. We need to stop this. We've put in a very specific ordinance, and now your variance is to request to go to the exact units that we stopped. That's my concern with the density and the spirit of the ordinance that's not being addressed. The properties are almost 124 years old to 73 years old. An ordinance was then put into place to stop it from continuing. 19 years later, you're telling me they're 100 years old, so that we should apply this now. No, it makes a difference that they're 100 years old, in my opinion.
And to Mr. Corbett's point, you know, there's this moderation that you're looking at to transition away from this, and I'm not seeing that occurring here. I understand for you it's an economic aspect and what's viable. However, the density issue still pops up, and it makes the hardship question challengeable as well as the substantial justice in my area. And those are the questions that I'm kind of directing at this. I understand that you can physically mate this space, and I understand that what used to be there is there, but it's how do you find that transition? And it's not a succinct, specific line, it's a transitionary line. It doesn't mean it's the edge of High Street or Maple Street. It's a transitional area that sometimes you can see that moderation and understand the hardship. But I am having a hard time with it. However, I do understand and appreciate the challenges that you're describing based off of the slope and what's in the ground. So that's kind of where my thinking is, and I'm just supporting Mr. Corbett's, you know, expressions here that's where he's at as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Burgess?
When they changed the zoning, the reason they changed the zoning, okay, was to stop the proliferation of people taking their properties and splitting them into smaller pieces to make additional property, or make it a duplex, or more apartments. We probably had half a dozen or more in the last 10 or 15 years before this, where they would transition to take this house and split it, okay? And that's why part of that. And this part of the city has all that transition housing, has all the workforce housing, pretty much, in the area. Another thing is, somebody said something, Londonderry's way far away. It's less than a quarter of a mile up Ash Street. You go up just before you get to Ash Street Extension, and there's a bump in the road, and that's the line for Londonderry and Derry. So, we're not that far away from what they were thinking about. They want to have single-family homes in this area because it's so saturated with additional housing for workhouse housing. So,
do you know, was all these parcels here that are developed, were those all part of the original home that was there and demolished? Do you recall that? Or know any record of that?
I believe there was separate deeds that were in the package. I think they were separate owners, but I can look
I
into
see.
that for you.
Well, because I remember the home that was there, I remember, and it's not one of those things where when I drive by there, which I'm in that area frequently, I don't say, well, look at that, I remember that house. But it's a conversation that spurs the memory, and you recall what was there before. I think we've been staring at loaders and bulldozers there for the last 5 years, correct?
I think you're right.
Mr. Chairman, that was a single-family home.
It was, okay.
Yes.
And I knew it was was it a single, not a two-family? Yeah.
One man was in it, that's it.
And, but it was, that whole parcel there belonged to that one home, or was it two parcels at one point?
From what I understand, it was all together, because back when they started their application in 2018, it was all one parcel. So I guess unless it was decades before, there were some consolidations. But I know that in 2018, it was all one parcel.
Got it, okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions
This-
off the board? Are we all set?
I think we're all questioned out.
Folks, we'll go to public unless you have anything else you want to share with us before we do that. And of course, you do have the rebuttal ability. But do you have anything else? You want to rest for now?
We can rest.
All right, so, all right, let's make a call to public at this point, and our first call would be for anybody who wants to support this application. We have some phone numbers posted on the screen. Mr. Corby, you want to do the honors?
Yep, anybody at home who wishes to dial in, you're going to dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140, and you'll press star 9 to raise your hand. If you're having any technical issues, please dial 603-845-5585, and someone will help you.
Very good. And anybody here in the room wish to speak in favor of this application? All right, seeing nobody. You have anybody out there in remote land, Mr. Preventer?
We do, but seeing none rise at this time, Mr. Chair.
Good enough. All right, so at this time, we'll make a call to anybody which is opposed to this application, would like to come forward and speak. This would be your opportunity to be heard. This would be your opportunity to be heard. Folks, you'll have to abandon the dais there.
There you go.
All right, first up is this gentleman from Florida, apparently.
Someday.
Yeah.
My
Have your seat, please. Identify your name and
My name is William Carpenter, and I live at 10 Ash Street on the corner of Ash and Hillside since 2001.
Could you get a little closer to the mic, please?
Okay. I'll make this short. I know this ordinance was put in place for a reason. The word has come up many times, density. And I know you've upheld it a couple of times already. We're just asking you to stay the course. We really don't want another 15 families in our backyard, basically. Single-family homes is great. We got no problem with that. But as I say, density, it's just too much for that area. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the board? Nope. All set. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Next, if you'd like, you can come up. This lady, I believe, has a thumb drive that I've heard a lot about.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Stanion. This is my husband, Charlie. We live at 5 Everett Street. We moved there in 1986.
Did
I've written this all up, but so much has changed listening to what they had to say that I'm going to kind of piece everything together. But I would like to start with the video. I was heading to Benson's to buy a paintbrush. A tree fell on my porch. I'm refinishing it. And this is what I experienced at noontime.
Uh-huh.
That's normal traffic at noon.
Noontime.
Now, if you
Nobody's
look,
stopping at the stop sign.
You noticed that?
Did you notice that?
but if you also look, you can't see the driveway for the proposed townhouses. I can't even see Ash Street. I have to pull out into the middle of the road to be able to see those cars. If there were any cars coming out of the proposed condo unit, which that's going to be where all those cars, 15 units, at least 30 cars, not including delivery, FedEx, utility, all those vehicles are going to have to come this way.
It's High Street.
So I had to sit there and wait for that.
So is this your driveway?
This is Everett Street. This is
This
the
is
end of
Everett,
Everett Street.
okay.
So now I'm going to pull out to see if anybody's coming out of Ash Street. And
There you
then I
go.
can see the driveway where Stabile wants to put 15 units of condos in there.
Yeah, that bush down there is the end of the road.
This is just a random video. I didn't stalk the corner. I was heading to get some natural paintbrushes at Benson's, and I was sitting there, and there was so much traffic, I thought I should probably take a video of this. So I pulled out my cell phone.
Yep.
Okay.
So I want to start off with giving some faces to the non-faces that the lawyer gave. I mean, it seems like we live in an industrial area when in fact we live in a neighborhood where everybody knows their names. We help each other. I know people blocks away. Everybody knows each other. It is a tight neighborhood. As you can see, behind me, these are people, these are hardworking people. We are the workforce housing that everybody works. Some people work nights, people have kids. I work odd hours, my husband works odd hours. We all work. We're all tight. Sorry, I'm getting nervous.
We're not going to bite your head off, honest to God.
Mr. Burgess is getting nervous for you.
I want to start off with Ray Paquin owned that property. It was a farm property owned by generations of family, and he used to farm the troublesome ledged property behind his house.
And who is this again?
Ray Paquin. He was the original owner of that property.
Paquin.
Paquin.
People keep coughing right at that moment.
Well, it's that
Okay,
time of
thank you.
year.
All right, thank you.
So when the person who purchased the property, he originally proposed 20 units of Section 8 housing to be put in there, which was turned down very quickly by the town. So then he sat on it for a while and then decided he wanted to put in single-family homes. We fought for 2 homes, which we thought would make sense on that property. The meeting ended, the final meeting ended saying, okay, we agree to 2 homes. 4 days later, we get an email saying, there's got to be another meeting and you're not allowed to speak. And we went to it and we were told 3 homes were going to be going in and we could not say anything about it. But at that point, George Sorois, who recently retired, said that the MDR2 is here to protect you, that there won't be Section 8 housing, that like the bridge, the end of the bridge is the cutting point where they're going to be putting in 26 units of workforce housing 1 block away from our neighborhood, which is what, I can't imagine how many cars that is, and I don't even know where they're going to park those cars. But the town, the condos, the cluster of condos that Stabile wants to put in, that's at least 30 cars pouring out of 1 spot on High Street. Now, High Street is a shortcut for I-93 and shopping in Londonderry. It's always busy all the time. That High Street is a neighborhood with children. School buses make stops on High Street. If you were to walk on High Street from Everett Street, the sidewalk stops. You have to cross the street to get on another sidewalk. You have to cross the street, and then you have to cross the street again to get on another sidewalk. It's either you walk in the traffic or you keep crossing the street to follow the sidewalks. It can't hold that kind of traffic. It's a liability to have that much traffic on that road. It's just, I don't understand how this is even being considered because the traffic itself is a deal breaker. Sorry, now my mouth is completely dry. I gave away my last stick of gum. The lawyer was saying it's all businesses and whatever. George said that the reason why we're protected with that MDR2 is because Benson's is building a storage unit on the other side of the bridge where there used to be a spray painting thing and something else. And they were building those townhouses on the other side of the bridge. He said, this is going to protect you. I want that honored. We have, our house is a 2-bedroom, 1,100 square foot, what used to be a cottage that people came up from Boston to live in. It has a dirt floor basement. Our second floor is eaved. Those 4 townhouses that are going in between the other ones will be like the Twin Towers in our backyard. We will have no privacy whatsoever. The lawyer said, it's not the person's hardship, it's the public. We are the public. We are the public. We're the ones that are going to have to live with all of these people crammed into the middle of our neighborhood. It's literally in the middle of houses. And I might add, they painted a different picture, but there are 10 homes there. Charlie Hatch's was turned into a 2-family. The house next to me was owned by a former chief of police in Derry, and that was turned into a 2-family. The number of little apartments down at the end used to be a garage where they repaired cars. I don't know where that other house, the 3-family, came in because it doesn't even fit with our neighborhood. But 6 of those 10 homes are owner occupied. It's not like we're just rentals everywhere. They are owner occupied. This is a neighborhood. These are people. You can't just cram 30 people in or more. I mean, if it's 3 floors, there's a bonus room behind the garage for the kid that decides to come home again. And there's another car, another person. Where does it stop? Where's the protection for us? I mean, we are already here. We matter. Now I'm going to try and get back to what I wrote. I might start off with when Stabile sent out the letter inviting us, they didn't send it to 2 of the actual homeowners. They didn't know about that. They said in their letter that it was a proposed 12 condos. When my husband went there, I had to work. It was 15 condos. So right off the bat, false advertisement. Maybe they thought we'd feel better if they went back down to 12, but no, I don't even want them there. I want 2 houses to go in that property because that's all that makes sense. And that rain garden was put specifically there because Horn Pond is right across the street. And that's a hill. That was to protect that pond, which feeds into Beaver Brook, which then feeds into another pond. I can't remember the name of it, the next town over. There's more to it than what they're painting. They're painting a very narrow picture of a very big thing. I have no water in my mouth. Hold on. We don't want a cluster of condos in the middle of our block of 10 homes. We just don't want a cluster of condos. The traffic, the noise, the light pollution created by the condos will diminish our quality of life. I definitely will diminish our quality of life and bring down the property values. They said may enhance our property values. Nobody will buy our home with a tower of 4 3-story condos right behind our property, with the road, I might add, runs right against our property line to feed up to those 9 condos. So that's 18 cars feasibly, plus delivery and whatever else. That would be going right by our house, so we'd have to listen to that all day long. Plus, at night, when they would be pulling out of their nicely, they say tucked-in basements or whatever, those lights are going to go right into our house as they're turning around. That's going to hit us. Sorry. It also doesn't consider guests, utility, delivery, trash pickup, whatever. That's a lot of vehicles on top of a lot of people. All that traffic is going to be going onto High Street, which is the one-way. It has to go. That was what was decided. I don't know. I don't see how that's going to work, particularly with the workforce housing that is going in where the shoe factory was, which a lot of our homes in that area were workforce housing for the shoe factory. Our neighborhood is that old. So if it's 26 units, there's at least...
I think there's a calculation of 1.5 cars per unit
for the workforce housing?
for that development.
All right, so let's say there's 30 cars. So you add the 30 cars to 30 cars, and everybody's going to be trying to go on I-93 to work or do whatever, because everybody uses that road. It's an excellent shortcut, unfortunately. So you have that going on, because Elm Street is a one-way at that point where they're going to be parking their cars. They will have to go onto Maple Street and then turn onto High Street. The 4A, the new 4A exit will pour out onto North High Street, which then comes up to the 3-way stop as you can see, nobody stops, and come out on High Street. We have a lot of traffic, and I don't think there's been any, actually, there is a traffic study being done right now. It's called, which one? It's called Connections 2050. We got it, I got an email of that. It's studied by the DOT and Southern New Hampshire's long-range plan called Connection 2050. Is concerning the region's roadway safety action plan. The picture of our neighborhood wasn't much different from Manchester as far as accidents in our concentrated area, not East Derry, but in West Derry. The concentration of minor to fatal accidents was all concentrated, not on 93, on our side of 93 in our neighborhoods. But to my knowledge, there haven't been any impact studies done on how adding 2 sections of highly concentrated housing, a block apart from each other, will affect our neighborhood. And that's the bottom line, is the traffic and the concentration of people that weren't meant to be crammed in like this. I mean, this has been green space for us for a long time now. We fought for two family houses which would have fit in there perfectly. They could have put in beautiful houses with a lot of land and made money off of it. But somehow it got switched to 3 after it was agreed to be 2 family. I don't know, that's done. But also I'm confused, has Stabile paid for the land?
No, it's under contract.
So there's nothing for them to lose if they walk away from this.
Well, I'm sure they've invested time, but that's a side matter. Let's just stick to your points about traffic and noise.
If I was going to buy a house, I would really look into it before I bought it. And if I saw that it had a leaky roof and whatever, I wouldn't buy it. So, all right, then I won't mention anything about the profit that they'll make off of it either. And I wanted to talk about the contractor that wanted to build the 2-family on Hillside Ave. I know that was mentioned, but I want to hit open that because the lawyer kind of skipped over that. It was turned down. That's right around the corner from us. I mean, it takes me 5 seconds to walk there. So it's not far away. But I want to make sure that you understand that 6 of those homes are owner occupied. Over half of the homes on that block are owner occupied. And we don't see all that industrial that they're talking about. That's not in our thing. We see our neighbors, we see the extended neighbors, we know everybody's kids, families.
Yeah, understanding that the homes, to your point, right, that were built to support the shoe industry in town.
Yes.
The shoe industry, or the shoe factory, was seen from those homes, and it just became part of the environment.
Right.
However, I think that was before electricity was invented, and understanding that you have the public service structure there doesn't quite fit that. But I understand your point, and I understand the peppered aspects. The granite industrial gases was before us 10 years ago, Mr. Burgess. So, you know, that doesn't quite fit the neighborhood, but it gets peppered in and out, and you can see that that's the transitional line for going from one zoning area to another.
And I might add, those townhouses that they're talking about on Maple Street, the house that used to be there was a derelict house where drugs were being sold. And we were so happy to see those put in. And they aren't 3 stories from where we look at them. They're low to the ground. They're 3 stories facing Horn Pond and Maple Street leading up to here. It's...
Okay. Is that about it?
I guess so.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
You feel you've been fairly heard?
Appreciate it.
All right, very good, thank you. Anybody else? All right, just gentlemen with anybody out there remotely, Mr. Provencher?
Seeing none rise at this time online, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
My name is Frederick Sear, and I'm at 44 High Street. And my wife's name is Lisa. We've been here since 1987. And I'm actually a heavy equipment operator. I work in heavy construction. So I've actually talked to the owner about buying the property for $300,000, and I just couldn't make it work for me. As a three-family, three houses, I looked at putting two houses in or just one. So I know it works, and I know how ledge works too. You can also slab build with a house. I know that I could build houses there if I chose, and make a profit. So I'm not worried about that. We think that this is way too many units for our area, and I don't buy the argument that this ledge, we all know there's ledge there, I know, that it can't be, mediated, and that the infrastructure can't be put in just like it would have had to be. I think it was postponed because of the cost of building products, which are coming down. I don't think this fits for the area. I know when it was approved, where the driveway sits now that's gated, they did not want that any closer to the three-way stop because of the danger of the speed of the cars that come off, which you could see. I'm on the corner, and they'll go by Everett Street doing 35, 40. And then we'll have 8 or 10 cars that go the wrong way every day. So I believe it would be, you have to be very cautious just pulling out of Everett Street that closer to the stop sign. People just don't pay attention. Half of them coming past the gas, they just cruise through the stop sign. And I've almost got T-boned from cars going the wrong way. And I'll stop and go, and then someone's coming and almost gets me anyways. The other thing I was thinking about is the water that, we have a catch basin at the bottom of our street, and like this summer, the heavy rains, it was still heading for the pond because it was just overwhelmed. So the way that's set up, there's not a lot of green space to actually absorb the water. And if you put it, like if you're catching it coming off the roofs, I understand that concept, then it has to go into something. And, talking to other people, I know that the retention pond that we looked at on the other plans, I really believe that with the three-house build, that really didn't need to be there if everything was directed in the right ways. So I think that was something that could have been eliminated. And I do believe, and always have believed, that you could eliminate that as a product of something that needs to be maintained. And understanding condo associations, because I have a house on a lake in Maine, different people get onto the boards, change rules to help themselves and work against something else that somebody else wants to do. So I don't buy the thing about, there's always going to be a buffer because condo association decides their own rules. And so they could take it right back and fence or do whatever they want. They have the right to it. It's their property. So, and the traffic is just a concern. Safety, the cars coming in and out of because it's not going to be a regular driveway, which was approved before. It's going to have to be pretty much the length of a side width of a street because you're going to have traffic coming in and out. And I believe you'll see a lot of deliveries just like we see on normal streets. And those are our concerns.
Okay.
So that's about it. My wife just wanted me to talk. I have to go to work because I'm taking time off. I didn't appreciate the last time taking time off from work and then having it we can't make it this time.
Yeah, understand it's a judicial process, and it's their right to table that or ask for that
Yes.
postponement, okay?
All right, I
Miss-
think.
Can I
just
ask a
hang on
question?
just a second,
Yes.
Mr. Tripp. Thank you.
I believe you said that there was water coming from someplace and going to the catch basin, and the catch basin wasn't adequate to...
Right.
Now, was that coming from that property?
Coming down from, well, right now, the property, even though it looks like a bomb was dropped on it, absorbs the water because it's got natural habitation. So our street is Everett Street. During the heavy torrential rains, the water comes down so fast that it gets ahead of the basins. And we have a catch basin right at the end of our street, which the water goes into normally. But if you got really heavy rains, it will push past that. There's no basin there. So any water that makes it past the basins will actually make it to the berm on the opposite side of High Street. And if it doesn't, it'll run down to the corner because it can't breach onto the
My
condos.
question was, does the water come from the property that they're asking to develop?
Right now, no, because there's no tar. It's all dirt and a cellar hole and vegetation.
So
But once it's
the
developed-
situation is that the water issue is extraneous to this discussion.
Yeah, it should be because the pond's across the street, and
Yeah,
once
but-
you introduce pavement into the situation and paved areas, you're taking away from your green space, which can absorb, has an absorption rate for fluids.
I understand that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. Anybody else?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep. All right, anybody else? Come right up. Name and address?
My name's Michael Bancotti, 13 Hillside Ave.
Okay.
Yeah, I only moved up here almost 8 years ago, so I'm new to the area. But it took me and my wife over 10 years to find the house we wanted to buy. Every single night for 3 months straight, I came up here and I drove up and down Hillside a bunch of times where I lived. I wanted to see the area. I lived in East Boston. Logan Airport was my backyard. I had the planes, had the crime and everything else. I grew up in East Boston, lived there for 49 years. Finally moved up here. I finally got my wife to agree to move up here, and we moved up here. And like I said, and actually the woman that was up here talking a little while ago, Cheryl, was one of the first people I met in the neighborhood, and she is one of the reasons that I bought the house that I'm in, is because I was talking to her and asking her questions about how the other neighbors were and everything like that, and she introduced me to a few of the neighbors and stuff, and that was what made my decision. I grew up in East Boston. I don't want to feel like I get up in the morning, I stretch my arms, and I'm rubbing my knuckles on the house next door to me. I wanted a small, quiet area. I actually paid the guy more money than he wanted for the house to get it, because we wanted that house in this area. And just a couple of the big issues that I have with that is I saw the layout for the driveway, where it was going to go in and the emergency exit and everything. And I owned my own construction company for 25 years. And I know how condos work. I've built a bunch of them. I've rehabbed a bunch of them. When they realize that driveway on the other side of that property isn't going to work, all of a sudden the condo association's going to say, well, now that's the emergency exit, and this is the entrance for people to come in and out of. I've already saw 2 kids get hit on a Hillside Ave because they drive like lunatics anyway on that street. There's another street, they don't pay attention to the stop signs on the street or anything. And just all the traffic going by and everything, you gotta, if High Street's backed up, they're gonna be coming up Hillside. If High and Hillside are backed up, then they're gonna go up to Pillsbury or Ash Street Extension or whatever. It's not good. And everybody over that side was talking about how much they cared about the neighborhood and everything. Well, I know at least 4 people, myself included, that never got any invitation to anything to talk about this before. And the lawyer for them doesn't even know what streets, because she called Hillside Highland Street. So it's just, they don't live in that area. They don't know what they're going to affect in that area. If you just came into that area for a couple of weeks, lived in any one of those houses for a couple of weeks, and you just talk to the people as they're walking by, say hi or whatever, you can strike up a conversation with someone and stand there for an hour talking to someone before you even realize it's gone. Someone that you don't even know. The other thing is that Hillside Ave, people are walking their dogs back and forth up and down that street all day. My next door neighbor, Gordon, he has problems with his legs and stuff, but he goes out for his walks every day. He's limping along in his cane and everything. There's no no sidewalks on Hillside Ave. And now you're going to try and put a whole bunch more cars up and down Hillside Ave? You know what I mean? And once that 4A opens, I don't know what else they plan on doing to reroute traffic down on the end of the street where the police station is and everything. I have no idea what they're planning on doing down there, but if they just drop it out onto, I forget the name of that street. If they just drop 4A out onto that street, you know what the traffic's going to look like over here? It's going to be absolutely ludicrous, never mind in adding more and more and more cars. You know, and the way I look at it is, just from me living in a big city and everything, every apartment has 2 cars. The husband and wife have a car. Now you got a 2-bedroom apartment, so you probably have the husband and wife and at least 1 child. They turn 16 years old, they got a car now. So you got 3 cars for every apartment. 15 apartments, that's 45 cars. Well, they got garage under the house for 1. Where are all those other cars going to park? You can see, they can say, well, the person will park in the garage and someone will park behind them outside. No, because when I had my brother-in-law's camper up in my driveway, I would park in the driveway, and my daughter didn't want to get up in the morning to move her car, so she actually parked on my front lawn. Or vice versa. She got home, I was parking on the front lawn. Someone's not going to, if the husband has to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, the wife's not going to get up at 5 o'clock to go move the car to let him out. You know, so it just, I don't see it working. I don't see it working. And just, like I say, the noise, the traffic, all the extra people. And when you got traffic, you got people that are speeding to try and get around the traffic. Anybody that's driven knows that. Someone will go 90 miles an hour up a side street because they know they can beat the light at that end before this guy gets there.
All right, so we get it. It's safety, and you're concerned about traffic volume, and you know, I think you've repeated that a couple of times. So is there anything different that you'd like to share with us? You're all set?
That's all set.
Right, just saying on a second. Anybody have any questions? Oh, okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep. Anybody else in opposition? Come right up.
More?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
More? No, 2 more.
We'll have a break. Hi, good evening.
Good evening, y'all. My name is Stephanie Marshall, and I actually live in one of the 124-year-old homes. I live on 3 Everett Street. And we purchased our home September 15th of 2005, and we actually finally had moved in on the 17th. So it took us 2 days, and we were coming from Maple Street, a three family unit on Maple Street. So we had looked at different properties, And what sold us on Everett Street was the fact that the schools were within walking distance. So if the kids were, because we have 2 children, and if they were to miss the bus, I could walk them to school. So I wasn't concerned about, things like that. But my significant other is coming from Roxbury. I'm coming from Lawrence. So for us to be able to buy our own home, was just beyond beautiful. What sold me on 3 Everett Street was the fact that there was only a single family home behind us, and everything was greenery. It was just beautiful. The older gentleman who lived there when we got there, he was very kind, sweet. I talked to him. It was really nice. A neighborhood. Cheryl was another one that we had met. She came and brought us some mums. And then Fred Sears, the other gentleman prior to who said he had to leave, they came and brought us some goodies to welcome us to the neighborhood. And again, we're coming from Lawrence and Roxbury. That is something that we are not familiar with. Living in Lawrence, people were living on top of each other. 3 family homes, 4, multifamily homes. I heard them keep saying, oh, it's multifamily units, it's multifamily units. They're trying to make it seem as though the 2, like the Sears home, that's a 3-family, okay? It really doesn't look like a 3-family. Then the home on the corner of Everett and Highlands, that is a square property. You wouldn't think of it as being multifamily. Mm-hmm. And then the 3-family home that they're talking about, it's there, but it's not there, if that makes sense. And then the other, I do believe it's a 2, down and up, so it's a 2 unit. So it's not like they're trying to make it seem like, oh, there's a bunch of multifamily homes living there. It's not like that. It's more of a community, and it's more of a neighborhood. My concern is, I don't know anything about development. I'm a clinical psychologist, so I have no idea about development. I have an autistic child. My concern is safety. That's number 1. My other concern is privacy. I'm used to being able to go out in my backyard and look at all that beautiful greenery. Now I have to be worried about going out in my backyard and not being able to enjoy my family cookouts, folks coming to my home because of corporate greed, and then I heard them talk about, oh, it's going to increase the value of the property of their home. My home is 124 years old. It's going to devalue the property if they put all those multifamilies there, all those multifamilies there. I heard townhouses, then I heard condos, then I heard single families. So these are the terms that they were using. So I guess my concern is safety. That's the other one. Security. That's my other concern. Privacy is my other concern. And our lifestyles that we have become accustomed to living, me on 3 Everett Street. It's a beautiful thing to be able to go outside and not have to hear arguing and fighting and gunshots. It's beautiful. I guess my question is, when they were taking these 15 units into consideration, did they take our safety into consideration? Did they take our privacy into consideration? Did they even take us into consideration? And I think allowing them to put these 15 units would be a detriment to our safety, our property value, and our lifestyle that we have become accustomed to. So I just ask if y'all take us, the little people, into consideration. I actually work from home, so I do telehealth from home. So how am I going to be able to work with a client who's in suicide mode with all this noise going on and all this ruckus going on? I'm not going to be able to find a safe space, and I don't think it's fair that because they can't afford to put 3 buildings or 3 homes on this property, I think it's false. Because what the material that they want to use to build these units, why come they can't use them to build 3 single-family homes on? It just doesn't make sense. That's another thing. And not only that, what about the rodents? You know, you start digging, you start moving, you start shifting, and now we got to pay for pest control, you know, because of corporate greed. And I just ask y'all to take us into consideration. Again, my home is 124 years old. That's my forever home. I'm not selling it, I'm staying there, but I just wanted my voice to be heard as a homeowner.
Safety and diminution of your property value are your concerns.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions?
And privacy.
All right, privacy. All right, very
By
good.
the way, I lived in Lawrence also.
Go ahead and,
I'm sorry?
I came from Lawrence,
Really? Bailey Street.
Bowden Street.
Mr. Burgess,
And then the Beacon Project.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
yes.
sorry.
please. I was born in Lawrence, but let's get past that.
Are we all set?
We are set, yeah.
Okay, thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
We're going to do a point of order. We're just going to break for just a second. We have other cases that are probably not going to be heard. Mr. Corbett, you want to introduce the fourth case and give opportunity for table?
Yeah, the fourth case tonight is case 24-1133. Applicants requesting a special exception to allow the operation of a small nail salon at the residence. Do have concern that we won't get to it at this time, and I would propose tabling it to our next meeting.
Okay, and do I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Mr. Burgess has that second. Is that applicant here? Okay, well, we won't hear you tonight. You'll be put on to the next agenda, probably at least second, possibly first, but not likely. You have that option of sitting out till 10 o'clock, but we're giving you that courtesy to dismiss and table to the next meeting. Would you like that opportunity?
I don't have a choice, right?
Well, you can sit and wait until 10 and see what happens, but we're not seeing it likely. So if that's acceptable with you, we'll make that motion. All right, motion's on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, very good. We'll put you on the schedule for next meeting, okay? Stiletto also, I'm not seeing that you're going to get through I don't see that they'll get through the first of their two.
Round two, right?
Yep. Make that motion if you'd like. We'll give that option if it hits the floor.
Again, case 24-131 and case 24-132. The business, as well as their sister company, deemed to fall under the definition of contractor. However, we will need a separate variance for both of these properties as they're two distinct business entities. So I do propose moving both of these cases to the next meeting as well.
Very good. That motion's made. Could I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, very good. Gata Corporation, are you here? Yeah, that's you folks?
We're the tenant, yeah.
You're the tenant, okay. As you've heard, if you had the one, I might say, well, we'll take a gamble, but you have two, so we're not going to get through yours either. You accept that invitation to come back to the next meeting?
What is the next meeting? Is it this month or is it next month?
November,
It's the
First Thursday of November, so the 7th maybe? Or the 6th?
31st.
I think the second and third.
Third, 5.
we don't rubber stamp here. All right, you want to accept that invitation? Yes. Very good. Motion's made and seconded. All in favor of tabling two cases, 24131 and 24132, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. We'll see you folks at the next meeting. Thank you. All right, so let's continue with public input on the first case, 24-130. Anybody opposed? That floor is still open. Come forward, sir. Thank you, Mr. Corbett.
Mr. Chair, if I may, as this gentleman makes his way to the stand, we have had some recent attendees join us via phone. If we could just remind them how to raise their hand if they so desire.
Very good. If you just press star 9, if you're out there, we'll recognize you when we get the break, and we'll bring you in remotely.
And just a note to those who did just dial in, cases 131 and 132 and 133 have been tabled to our next meeting on November 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Blaine Willett. I live on 8 Hillside Ave. I've been living there since the end of April. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points. First one being they did bring up the value that my property was recently sold at. So I believe it would be applicable to talk about the fact that when I purchased that property, I believe we closed for $680. The builder did tell me that he had purchased 3 other lots within that immediate neighborhood and said that he anticipated those 3 would be sold for similar prices as well once he was done completing the project. So I don't believe them saying that it was an anomaly is applicable in this case. Another point that I want to make too is just if we could go to the image where it showed the red, pink, and yellow on the slide.
Could you get a little closer to the mic? It's hard to hear.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There you go.
Can you help us out on that video, Mr. You? Very good, thank you. This one here?
No, the one where it showed the rain garden.
Oh.
Can we go back a couple, Mr. Preventure, right there? I think
Yeah,
that's what
perfect,
want.
thank you.
Very good,
So
thank
we've
you.
heard a lot about hardship with this rain garden throughout the presentation. If you can just take a quick look at where exactly they're showing that is in all the green right there, and then if we can go to the other picture where it shows where those 3 townhouses would be built.
Where the townhouses. Yeah, where they put the rain.
You can see where that rain garden actually is currently. They're just putting pavement right over that. When questioned by Mr. Dunlon in regards to how they would actually solve that issue, I didn't really hear any sort of good answers. It was more so, oh, we'd put in roof, drainage. I mean, I don't think a house is going to be built without having gutters on it.
You don't think what?
Should be built without gutters.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay. Go ahead.
So where's the water going?
That was really all I wanted to point out. I just didn't think for something that was such a big hardship, they really addressed how they were going to solve it within their illustration.
Yeah, I think that there's different resources that they could use for that, but those could be stipulated at planning. But I understand your point as referring to Mr. Donlan's questions. The differences between them, but they'll have an opportunity to answer to that.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Very good. Anybody else out there wish to speak in opposition?
Mr. Chair, for your awareness, we do have a hand raised online.
Very good. Let's bring those folks in. Thank you, Mr. Preventure.
Absolutely. They're now allowed to speak. It's a phone number with last digits 398. We can have them press *6 and unmute themselves.
Are they there?
Looks like they're working on that right now, Mr. Chair. Here we go.
Sorry about that.
And good evening, caller.
Hello? Hi, this is Robert Van Zant from 8 Street.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with pretty much my awesome neighbors, which I kind of just met. I've lived here for 20 years, and I haven't met pretty much most of them except for one person there. The traffic on 8 Street is actually insane now. They drive down here sometimes 60 miles an hour. I can only imagine throwing 30 more cars into that mix. It's going to end up costing the city some money at the end of the day because at some point we're going to have so many accidents. Somebody's going to put up some stop signs. Somebody's going to have to get some more police to patrol the area. So yeah, this isn't a win for me. I don't foresee my house price going up. And I agree with the last person that was up, my other neighbor, on the price of his house. I think, don't think that's an anomaly at all. I think that my house is pretty much the same price, so I don't understand how that's an anomaly. And also the density, I appreciate you guys talking about the density in the neighborhood and trying to keep it. I appreciate really everything this board's done. I was in the last meeting and spoke at that one. So I do appreciate you guys, trying to keep this at the limit. And I think once we pass this portion, everybody says, okay, well, this is the line. Can't we just extend it a little bit? The next time somebody's going to want to extend it a little bit again. So we have to have some stoppage and some line where this is the line. We don't cross it. So hopefully, and like my neighbor said, the multi-houses around here are not just built multi-family houses. They're 100 years old. I don't think that was portrayed correctly. And that's about all I have to say. And again, I thank you very much for the board's work on this. I've seen it before, and I just hope we stick with it. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else out there, Ms. Preventure?
Seeing no one else rise at this time.
All right, very good. Everybody all set in the room? Seeing no one rise, we'll consider that we've met the statutes for a butter input and invite Attorney Pansiaco and her clients back up to the dais.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Prior to the applicant's rebuttal, may I suggest that we kick over to code enforcement?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. Sorry about that, Mr. Wentworth. Any input from staff at all? Microphone, sir?
Microphone, my friend.
Just that they're looking for a variance to construct the 15 townhouses on a lot that's in a zone that doesn't allow for that. So,
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wentworth. Anybody else? Attorney Pansiaco, you're all set. Go ahead. Your rebuttal.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, given the comments that we've gotten from the board, I've suggested that my client ask to continue this to the next meeting so that he can regroup and look at the density factor that's been raised by the board a little more closely. If the board would be willing to allow that, we'd like to be able to come back, at least feeling a little more informed rather than making an off-the-cuff decision tonight or asking the board to vote on something that we may very well be able to modify. I can't say whether we can or we can't, but if the board would allow it, I would like the opportunity to let them look at that more closely. Another thing, for the record, though, I do want to point out, when we sent the invitation out to all the homeowners, we used the legal abutters list.
Okay.
Just so the board knows. And the letter that we sent did not recite a certain number of units, and the renderings that we put up at the Derry Library that evening are the exact same ones that Doug put up tonight. So any kind of confusion on the number of units, I don't know where that came out because there's been no changes to that. And the people that have said they weren't invited, they got the abutters notice from the town, but I guess they didn't get our letter. They all sent. Okay.
Do you care to do any other rebuttal before we make that decision on tabling? There were several comments. The floor is yours, so and we've already dismissed the other cases. So in anticipation that we would go into a deliberation, you're welcome to use up the clock at this point.
Do you want to?
Well, I think I would just add, Mr. Chair, that I did hear several valid concerns expressed by abutters regarding engineering-related items. The only thing I would say to that is we're well aware of site distance requirements, drainage requirements, those type of things, and I think it just would be beneficial for the abutters to understand that if this were to move forward, all of those concerns would be something like traffic-related items. I'm sure that if this development were to be approved by this board and we went to the planning board, that Highway Safety Committee would be looking for a traffic study regarding this. So, I mean, I'm just trying to provide some level of comfort to some of those comments that I can't fully speak to at this stage because we haven't gotten to that level of engineering, but that those items would be addressed at the planning level.
Do you have any comments relative to what's been spoken about the runoff to Horn Pond? Is it Hood Pond? It's Hood Pond, right?
It was Hood Pond.
And the discrepancy from the rain garden at all. You don't have to answer to it, but that was a big one that's popped up. If you decide to defer that's not won't be held against you in prejudice.
No, I think what I would say is, obviously we haven't done a drainage analysis. I mean, obviously what we would typically do is a drainage model, modeling the pre-development drainage versus the post-development. And so there would be a differential in runoff, just like they alluded to, that, you know, you have a grassed lot right now, and that would change to a level of pavement and roof. I can really only speak in generalities at this stage, just because we haven't done the engineering, but what I can tell you with just my experience in these type of developments is that what I was referring to with the gutter system, of course, yes, there would be gutters, but as any house would typically have, but in this case, we would do engineered recharge systems as part of those gutter systems. So they would be sized to accommodate the flow of the roof and be able to recharge those areas. You know, the rain garden area that was shown, they had one practice on that site. It doesn't mean that, you know, this could be done in maybe 2 pond areas or a combination of underground or open drainage. So, I mean, I think if you were willing to grant a continuance, I could speak maybe a little bit more specific. I could take a look at some of the areas that we could be looking at for drainage and speak to that. But again, I just feel confident that I don't think we're proposing an overly dense layout based on my experience with a multifamily development. And there is opportunity for areas for drainage mitigation.
Okay. It's not unusual for the board to table decisions to a next meeting, particularly when it's at the board's discretion at different times if there's unanswered questions. And whereas you're requesting that, I don't see an issue with it. I'll leave that up to the board for any consideration. We can make a motion on that to table this to the next meeting, unless anybody else has any questions before we break. Seeing no gestures there, so if I can get a motion to, let's see how this flies, get a motion to table case number 24-130 to the next scheduled meeting. I could appreciate that. Anybody wish to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay. Anybody want to make a second? Hearing no seconds there. I've never found myself in this quandary in 8 years of steering a ship.
If I can at least give my opinion, we're at 2 hours and 40 minutes. We brought up density, I would say within 7 minutes. To now take it to this point that after we've tabled 3 other cases and now say we want to table and come back later, I feel it's disrespectful to the board's time, disrespectful to the other applicants' times. I do feel that to say we didn't do studies on a rain garden easement area, while I understand it, I do respect it, that should have been done ahead of time. To now be coming back after fighting about density, after saying, you know, this is the only item that'll work, kind of getting a feel of where it's going, and now saying we want to come back and change everything. Personally, I take offense to it. I don't think that you're valuing the board's time. You know, it's 8 community members, I believe.
Yeah.
Everybody here who's come 2 weeks ago, come again tonight. We kicked 3 cases out. Now we want to come back again in 2 weeks to continue this. I have a big problem with that.
I'd like to say something if I could. Other board members brought up concerns about the density, as you did, and it was asked if there was an opportunity to reduce density. Had we considered that? The answer to that was no. That was an honest answer.
Right.
I think we were given an opportunity to speak while the abutters were having their time to speak, and we were able to ask the applicant whether he thought that there was merit in reviewing a reduced density program on this, which I think, from what I've been hearing, if there was a different configuration, something that was more in line with the underlying zoning density, that may be more appropriate.
Right. But
And, you know, obviously, I don't think we can just on the fly ask that change without doing that additional.
But we also tabled this 2 weeks ago. We had people waiting, we had people show up, we had to table the case, and now we come tonight and say we're still unprepared to continue after getting some feedback. So what happens now at the next meeting when more challenging questions happen? Do we table again?
No.
You know, this is where we're now dragging into 3 meetings. It's a 6-week period that's affecting dozens of people. And I don't feel the respect for anyone else's time. If you're saying, well, we didn't expect these questions, no offense, what type of prep were we doing during the 2 weeks of tabling?
So, let's not go too much further with a reprimand here. Mr. Burgess, you had something you wish to
I was
add?
going to say that there is, it was brought up by the people over here that they had questions about the condo rules. They had questions about traffic, and parking, which was never covered in any of this so far. The privacy matter, I understand that. And again, where does all the water go? Which we didn't think to bring up. They did. So we've got a lot of questions here that that, in my opinion, should have been thought of ahead of time and brought forward.
So we don't have a second officially on this, but we'll presume that we've spoken to the matter. We're not getting that support. Mr. Tripp, if you'd like to withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw it.
Officially, very good, thank you. Folks, I think what we want to do is go ahead and proceed with this and make a decision on it. Your rights would be prevail under a reconsideration to the board after that denial. But if you're considering bringing back a different design, I think we could do that. But you probably would have to reapply for that hearing, all right?
Just for the record, and I'll summarize and close, Mr. Chairman, we deliberately met with the abutters ahead of time to try to, excuse me?
Yep, hang on. Folks, you're going to have to sit tight. You've had your process of time, and we're to this
And we
point.
did mail to everybody. We made that effort to try to answer questions up front and be more prepared. A lot of the people that are here this evening did not come to that meeting. Those that did come did not raise many of these issues, and they were shown the exact same plans. Had we been told about some of these concerns they have, some of which, like speeding traffic, we can't control, we would have been prepared. And from what you're seeing up on that screen, that represents a substantial investment in due diligence. This is an infill site. It's very unique engineering. It's very time intensive and very costly. And many of the issues that are now being mentioned are planning board issues. We're here for a use variance. We're not minimizing the concerns that are being raised. But many of these items, like Doug just said, have not been fully vetted. You don't do a drainage study to go to the zoning board for a use variance.
Well, and understand that a lot of the objections we're hearing are about safety, noise, privacy, diminution of property value, correct? And that's the debate. So you're right that calculating water flow off of roofs and how that's going to be contained is a planning board issue, and as well as the access or that runoff into the street, and I understand that. However, the board has the right to make a decision based off of some of the other criteria that we've had. And I don't necessarily want to say that the water runoff of roofs falls into any of those three categories that I've just mentioned, correct? Understanding that what the board decision is made, you have an opportunity by statute or case law to make an objection at this time. Otherwise, I think that we know where and have it on the record, but otherwise the board has that right to proceed with a decision on this application as has been asked. And if you want to modify at some later point, you can resubmit an application and renotice.
So to summarize and recap, I'll go through these items. And one thing I will do is remind the board, the application was deliberately styled as up to 15 units. And I would invite the board, when they do deliberate, if you have a number that you feel is suitable, feel free to let us know what it is. To summarize, we do not feel this proposal is contrary to the public interest. This is a mixed-use area. We checked the zoning line during the public session. It goes right down High Street. That's the edge of the MHDR2. And that's exactly where our driveway goes out to a different zoning district. This is a mixed-use area. All the existing structures that are there, regardless of their age, could remain the same, 2-family, 3-family, 7-family, for hundreds of years, provided they're replaced in kind. It doesn't mean that because the zoning changed, these are all of a sudden going to change into single-family homes. This is a mixed-use area. The multifamily, it's directly across the street on Maple. There's another one a short distance right down the street on Maple. That is a multifamily condo. Several multifamilies are in the area besides the ones in this particular district. The density of 15 units on 1.86 acres is less than the collective acreage of the units on the existing 10 lots within the same block. The same density we're proposing is what's allowed in what is presumed reasonable in zones where multifamily is permitted. And we meet all the setbacks. There's no relief required otherwise. We control all the setbacks also as a condominium development. Contrary to what was stated about condos changing their rules, they can't do that when it's a covenant imposed by the planning board. We can maintain the green around the edges of this property to preserve the privacy for not only the occupants of the new units, but also for the existing neighbors. That was part of the strategy here. And then also part of the strategy was to create a nice look along High Street and Ash Street as you drive by, not what you see now. It provides a positive transition between another zoning district and this mixed-use area. The units are also set back from the road. They're not on the edge of the road like many of the homes in the area are. It's also within walking distance, so people will be less likely to use vehicles. Another variable that we're not sure of either is how the traffic will flow through this area when 4A opens. We understand there's a lot of traffic now. It could be less. One never knows. But we do not feel this is contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. Not contrary to the public interest, I'm sorry. We also don't feel as though it's contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. Something doesn't become contrary to the spirit of the ordinance just because a use is omitted for new lots. And to be contrary, it must dramatically conflict with the ordinance objectives. When a rezoning takes place, they have to draw a line somewhere. They happen to draw it on High Street, right along the frontage of this property. The multifamily, when it was removed, the horse is out of the barn. We have the leftover land. We're trying to use it reasonably, and we are entitled to a reasonable return on our investment. A well-landscaped and professionally maintained condominium development in this location will elevate the area, at least from the viewpoint looking into this property from High Street. Having the 15 units also disperses the cost of the maintenance, or such number of units this board feels would be appropriate. we will comply with all the setbacks. And for that reason, we don't feel it's contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. It is a residential use amongst other residential uses. We feel substantial justice would be done because the loss to the applicant is the loss of a reasonable use of their land. This cannot be developed economically positively with the present 3-lot subdivision, for all the reasons we've discussed that are inherent in the land itself. We do not feel there is any loss to the public here either by allowing a condominium development on this site. The reasons here are especially true where these 3 lots have sat here now for 5 years and no one's bought them. No, Denny, before she died, did not list these in MLS. She was looking to sell them to builders she worked with so she could list the units. That's why you don't find them in MLS. Most projects and land like that does not get listed with MLS unless it's overpriced. The pro formas that we've submitted demonstrate that 3 single families are not feasible on this parcel of land. There's geological, topographical, and locational challenges associated with the property. There is also infrastructure costs and regulations to be complied with that are town regulations, and we're happy to do that, but they come at a cost, and it's not inexpensive. Costs have gone up a lot in 5 years. Allowing an attractive townhome community to be built here will improve the area and would be a win-win for everyone. The surrounding values will not be diminished. If you look at Exhibit 4, prepared by Gail Nickerson at Berkshire Hathaway Varani, she addresses 4 sales in the area with multifamilies between $442,000 and $476,000. These townhouses are slightly smaller, but her comparables on solds were 382 to 400, right where we're proposing to sell these units. What my client is proposing falls squarely within the parameters of what the market is looking for, and it is the market that determines the values, not us or anybody else. And this will improve the area and couldn't diminish the area because as the property sits today, it does not enhance the surrounding properties. The unnecessary hardship prong begins with identifying the special conditions of the land. And then the hardship arises when the regulations are strictly applied. The shape of this lot, the geology of the lot, the fact that the most of the usable land is in the middle towards the back away from High Street are all challenges because the legal frontage goes up so steeply and is so difficult to deal with on High Street and Ash Street, in addition to the site distance challenges, all of which are existing, all challenge the development of the property. There is, of course, we talked about the rain garden, the one that will be very difficult to force the owner who lives at the back of the property to maintain. There's limited yards on the other 2 lots and a common driveway, one with a back loading garage, another one with a front loading garage. The existing encroachment along the narrow strip that goes up to Hillside, it is 30 feet wide, but we lose 2 feet due to the encroachment. That will have a guardrail if utilized. That's to protect the abutting building that's encroaching.
Ms. Panciaco, can I please just interrupt for one moment? Mr. Chair, we've at 9:58. Can I make a motion to extend our meeting?
You may.
Motion to extend the meeting
I'll second it.
10 minutes.
Thank you.
Second by Mr.
Second,
Burns.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Attorney Panciaco, proceed.
I'm almost done. Another challenge is we are on the outside edge of the MHDR2. We are the transition area. We face industrial and commercial properties. You will see them because part of the development will remove those trees. People who live on the streets that run perpendicular to High Street wouldn't necessarily see those, especially with the hill that this land creates. There are hefty site development costs associated with this particular site. All of these special conditions are the source of the hardship created by the strict application of the uses, the very limited number of uses in the MHDR2. There's very few options for land in this area that is permitted. In the exclusion of the multifamily, it does create an unreasonable, unnecessary hardship on this particular property due to its nature, its characteristics, the dirt. That's where the hardship is. Not that we don't like guardrails or we don't like rain gardens. It's inherent in the land that these accommodations has to be made to meet regulations. And it's economically not feasible to create and build 3 single-family homes here. If they were built out as single-family homes and you took the land, the development cost, and the cost of the house, you would be overbuilding for the area. And the lots are unsuitable to begin with. Their shortcomings all have a direct bearing on the value of the land because they have to be dealt with. And we do think what we're proposing here, townhouse condominiums, is a reasonable use. And I have nothing more. Thank you.
Good, thank you. That was a rebuttal. Any questions from the board? Seeing no gestures there, take a motion, go in deliberation.
motion.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett.
I'll
Mr.
second it.
Burgess has a second. All in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Who would like to lead off?
Might as well be me, I guess. I just don't see these buildings being built on that corner. What the people talked to us about previously was some of their concerns, and I know living on that street that I have seen the traffic. In fact, yesterday I parked up in front of the house. We were going to go shopping, and school bus pulls up and stops, and the traffic is all the way down to Ash Street because the school bus stopped for a couple minutes around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So traffic is a big concern there. But I don't see it sits within the spirit of the ordinance. The ordinance was changed so that we would not have congested housing in this area, and that's townhouses to me are congested housing. I understand the one across the street because that was an apartment building to begin with. But these were not here as apartment buildings, it was a single-family home. And that's my 2 cents.
Very good. Are you speaking to addressing public interest, Mr. Burgess?
It's not in the public interest, I don't think.
Very good.
Not at all.
Thank you. Mr. Corbett?
As I've made clear, my biggest concern here is the disregard of the spirit of the ordinance. You know, we hear a lot of comments about how a line was just arbitrarily driven, and really what that takes me to is, the movie Blow, where George Jung says that he crossed an imaginary line with a plant, and he's trying to get out of his drug conviction. So, it's a true story. He's trying to get out of the drug conviction. Basically, what the judge tells him is, that's great. Unfortunately, it's not an imaginary line. It's real. To say that an arbitrary line was drawn So therefore, the first property after that line should not fit into that district. It was very clearly drawn there for a reason. So to now fit in a development like this, or frankly, a development on a property that since 1880 housed a single-family house, and to say that it doesn't work, and it will only work as a large development, if it's going to go back from 3 properties to 1, it should come back to 1 single-family house, in my opinion. So with other concerns on the table, I don't necessarily see the hardship. I do believe that it's also against the public interest. My number one concern is that it is the spirit of the ordinance. I think it's a complete disregard for it.
Very good. Mrs. Moran, any thoughts?
I agree with what Mr. Corbett was stating about the spirit of the ordinance. I struggle with it because it was made to prevent these types of projects, and doing it would be against the spirit of the ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Tripp?
Well, it's one of these things where projects like this, it appears that it creates more problems than it solves. So, adhering to the spirit of the ordinance, will prevent that.
Okay. Yeah, I have as I hear the expressions from the abutters, I get concerned about the public interest, almost marrying with some of the thoughts that Mr. Burgess has had, whether or not this whole project in its density and its accumulation of units, and also the traffic issues that could indulge here without having a traffic study. I think I can see the impact that some of the abutters have testified to and get a feel for it. I don't have to be a traffic engineer to understand the impact of the vehicles coming in and out of that parcel. I think the spirit of the ordinance is not being followed here. And primarily, I go back to the size of the lot and what was there, but also the point that Attorney Pansiaco makes about this being reasonable, a reasonable return. And I happen to think that it's excessive. And that's the barometer that I often use when looking at the 5 criteria: what is reasonable versus what is excessive. We don't stand in the way of capitalism or gain, but to understand that the price point of the lots, as one abutter testified, certainly makes affordable for 2 single homes here, creates a gain for the investor, and stays within the spirit of the community that is intended through the planning and approval of the town council. I don't see the hardship here when you consider the points that I just made relative to what is reasonable versus excessive. The reasonable is that you would get 1 extra house and gain on an oversized lot looking for an easement or a variance for something that had reduced frontage, but this board has often not been unreasonable in its grantings and its hearings, but this one, in this case, I find to be unreasonable. I find substantial justice certainly is not served when you hear the emotions of the abutters and their concerns about this. And so that's my positions on 4 of the merits of the 5 criteria. We can start by structuring the motion, and we have the subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. I don't know that anything else is necessary here, because this would, gesturing to Mr. Wentworth, that planning would be an automatic on this if this were to prevail, correct? Are there any other conditions or concerns the board would have if the gesture were to grant this application? Seeing no gestures there, I think we have the motion structured. I would take a motion to come out of deliberation.
I'll make that motion to come out of deliberative.
Second.
Very good. Mr. Burgess has that motion. Mr. Corbett has a second. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're out of deliberation. That means we're to the big point of the meeting, which is when Mrs. Moran reads the motion.
Would you like to add 5 more minutes? Because it's only 2.
Just go 10, please.
All right, Chair, I make a motion to extend the meeting another 10 minutes.
Second.
Very good. Ms. Moran has the motion. Mr. Corbett seconds on that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please read the motion, Ms. Moran.
I make a motion on case number 24-130 for Patricia M. Pantiaco on behalf of the Stable Company's owner High Meadows LLC to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-45.1.a of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of up to 15 multifamily townhouse condominiums after consolidation of the 3 parcels, parcel ID 29046, 29046-001, 29046-002, zoned MHR2, as presented with the following conditions. We have 1, subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections, and that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Burgess has the second. Thank you. All in favor of accepting that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion's on the floor. Mr. Corbett, you have finding of fact?
Yep, finding of fact for case 24-130. The board found that the properties are currently zoned medium-high density residential District 2. Properties were originally 1 lot, but received subdivision approval in 2020 to be subdivided into 3 single-family lots. The applicants are proposing to consolidate the 3 lots back to a single parcel and construct up to 15 townhouse-style condos. The board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application and incorporates all the meeting minutes into its finding of facts and decisions. Does anybody have any addendums to make?
Seeing no gestures, the finding of fact, all in favor of moving this for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Corbett, what say you?
I vote no primarily. I do not feel that it fit within the spirit of the ordinance.
Very good. Mrs. Moran?
Chair, I also vote no for the same reason of it not fitting into the spirit of the ordinance.
Very good. Mr. Burgess?
I believe that the variance will be contrary, to the public interest. I believe it does not, that word's not working today, is not in the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice is not done. It's because there's too many people or too many other things that we haven't brought up, I guess. And literal enforcement is not a hardship here.
Very good. Mr. Tripp?
I vote no. I agree that the spirit of the ordinance is not observed.
Okay. The chair makes that a no as well. I disagree with the public interest, as I've already noted, and the spirit of the ordinance is far outreaching of its intent. The application is far outside of the intent of the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice is not being done here by issues relevant to the abutters, and I fail to see the hardship on this, setting aside the geography of it, but the excessive build. So that's my decision, folks. Obviously, you can see your application has failed by a vote of 5-0. Anybody aggrieved by this decision has 30 days to ask this board for reconsideration. After that, recourse would be to Superior Court or to modify an application and come back and renotice. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, next order of business, minutes. We have the minutes from the last meeting.
October 3rd.
October.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Minutes from October 3rd. Anybody have any amendments, changes, or wish to approve that? No? We all wish to approve those minutes?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Mr. Corbett has the motion on the minutes. Could I have a
second it.
second, please? Mr. Burgess has a second. Very good. All in favor of approval of those minutes as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. And all the paperwork, I've lost my agenda for the meeting. What else was on there?
Nothing.
Okay, very good.
The agenda, if you want it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Do we have any cases for the next meeting scheduled? We have three now?
We pushed 3 to it.
There's
Yay.
no new applications?
No more additions to.
Got it. Well, curse the long month of October, anyway. All right, so we'll see all of you back here in the first week of November, the first Thursday, and I could take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. A second, please. Mr. Tripp? Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donlin. Very good. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a good night, everybody.
Woo-hoo.